See you later.
See you later.
Everyone, we are live on YouTube and we are broadcasting on Zoom. So we are up and running. Mr. President, the meeting is yours. The work session is yours.
Okay, I'd like to call this work session to order at 6:33. Roll call by the clerk, please.
Terry McGee,
Here.
Greg LeBoissonier,
Here.
Gary Cody,
Here?
Ian Dixon. Here. Deborah Bacon. Here.
Okay, how about the school committee? Would you like to call your roll call, Ms. Patnode?
Yes, Mr. President. I would like to call our meeting at 6:34. And could we have a roll call, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Here.
Dave Florio,
Here.
Luke Murray,
Here.
Donna Colunian,
Here.
James Pearson,
Here.
Craig Levis,
Here.
John Cowett,
Here.
Sarah Mangiarelli.
Here.
Okay, everybody is there, Mr. Patnode. I would ask that everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and I will lead. Thank you. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
stands
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, let me start off. We are going to have a budget work session. We did not have to have this budget work session, but I thought it was in the best interest of everybody to sit down. Let me first remind everybody, we're going to maintain decorum during this meeting because there's going to be things that are not going to be pleasing to everybody. And if anybody I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to speak. Just raise your hand or speak to me, and we will do. There'll be no talking over each other. We're going to maintain decorum. All right. Let me start off. I have a statement I prepared because I'm not very happy, as most of us are not. So I'm going to go negative, just as our superintendent has in the past in the meetings, and it's just not going to be good. Let me start by saying that we did not have to put this meeting together. This budget workshop, I was reluctant because we cannot get honest answers from our superintendent. This council has been transparent about this budget and honest and straightforward with why we attempted to pass a 0% increase, and we can't get the same from our superintendent and school committee. I am angry that the superintendent and our administration or teachers started a campaign to discredit the town council and email us with comments about why we cut sports and after-school activities. That is an outright lie. The school committee and administration makes those decisions. Own up to your decisions. The taxpayers deserve better. The taxpayers spoke. They want us to raise taxes, but they should know what they are dealing with for a school department. Last year, I approached all the bargaining units in town and asked for concessions to make this year's budget easier for the taxpayers. Most of the unions in the town attempted to help and make the budget process easier. Then COVID came and totally disrupted the budget process. To this day, we don't know the state's budget, which makes it difficult to present an accurate budget. That is why we've waited to present or attempt to put a budget together at this time, hoping to have more answers. The school department saved over $1 million last year with distant learning, but refused to use that savings when putting together this year's budget. The superintendent and school committee thought that this was a good time to give the superintendent and the 4 administrators raises so they might call it a stipend of $12,000 to himself and $6,000 to his administrators, and never said anything to the public at their school committee meeting. That is real transparent. While we are asking everyone to cut back, the school department decides to give themselves a raise. How despicable. Our town manager and our department heads have not received a raise in 3 years. The school committee has to know that this is okay, that it is okay to disagree with their superintendent. He works for them and not vice versa. That's my opening comments. We're not very happy. I'm calling this meeting for the taxpayers' reasons. I'm not really happy the way the school department's been with this. So with that being said, I'm going to ask the school department to give their app and their budget, explain to us, to the town council, what they need.
Madam Chair, can I jump in here? Do you mind?
Yes.
Yes, please start, Mr. Levis.
Thank you. So, it's ironic how you talk about decorum and you just want to sit there. I'm going to let the voters, which includes the entire community, not just the select individuals that obviously the council talked about when they talked about, taking care of the taxpayers. I'm not even going to address half the things you said because I believe the community knows the truth. And like I said, let the voters, let the taxpayers make their decisions. I don't even know why we're here tonight, Mr. McGee, because I'll be honest with you, I think we found out just a day ago what the purpose of this was. We've been very clear, been very transparent. We've encouraged people to speak. I'm going to take the high road and just say that, like, again, you talk about, like in terms of contracts, negotiations, and what we have done. You guys have talked about rainy day funds, and then it turned into a line of credit. I'm glad that you actually want to talk about the budget, because when we've had those other presentations, there was no conversation, no dialogue. Dialogue is when you suspend your beliefs and you look at both sides. And other than Dr. Dixon, the council refused to do that. So, and I believe the taxpayers do understand that. They do know that. And again, I will put my reputation against yours any day. In terms of, I'll follow and make my word, and if I make a mistake, I will correct it. But in terms of even how you started this meeting, like, to me, I don't know about you, I have a lot to do. I think most of the people on this have a lot to do. And if this is the way it's going to be, because I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you, the council, because we've never heard from you in terms of the budget. You've just made statements, never dialogue. When we've had work sessions together, excuse me, you said you weren't going to cut people off. You want to cut me off. When you said about, we have dialogue and work sessions, there's no questions. And then when we get off the call, there's all these statements made. I think the taxpayers see that. People can go back, and look at the videos and watch them and see the challenging situations the school department's been in terms of the leadership or lack of leadership. So, let's see what you put on the table tonight. Let's see if we can actually even have a dialogue, because we haven't had one since the pandemic. We still have to run and operate schools. And Mr. Anderson is on this call with us, or this meeting with us tonight, because he's going to, no matter what happens, we still have to operate schools, and he will explain the process. So we have a lot to accomplish, and we've been doing it pretty much. We feel like, at least I'll speak as superintendent, I feel like there hasn't been a partnership. Crisis happens. It's when we should pull together and join forces more, and that did not happen. And I think the community understands that.
Absolutely. Just once, I do want you to take the high road, like you say you do all the time, but it doesn't seem that way. If you do not want to be at this meeting, feel free. I mean, I'm doing this because I want the taxpayers to hear the budget requests from the schools, and we've already presented. The taxpayers told us they want us to raise taxes. Our only job as a school, as a council tonight, is to figure out how much to raise taxes. So if you'd rather not be at this meeting, Mr. Levis, anytime you decide you want, we can adjourn the meeting. I'm fine with that.
Mr. McGee, first of all, it's Mr. Levis, right? Not Levitz. Secondly, the sarcasm towards the taxpayers, I think they'll make their own decisions.
There is no sarcasm to the taxpayers. The sarcasm is meant for you because we can't get honest answers. So with that being said, are you prepared to give a request for your budget to discuss with us tonight or not?
I think there should be a dialogue between the school committee and the town council. That's what I believe it should happen. We have our information that we will present, but I want to hear the dialogue, because I think that in terms of, accountability, I have no problem. I want people to hold me accountable. I say all the time, if you don't like what I'm doing, all you need to do is convince 3 school committee members. But I want to see some accountability, I think, with the council. I'm hoping the school committee will address that.
I've started the dialogue, and I believe that we presented a zero increasing budget, and the taxpayers spoke, and they told us they want us to increase taxes. And like I said, tonight's job for the town council is to decide how much to raise taxes. They've already told us they want us to raise taxes. Did a good job of the campaign of getting the people out there to vote. I commend you for that. Unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of people, but that's the way democracy works. So they told us to raise taxes. We want to know. We know what the people can afford, or at least we think we do, but we want to know what you need and why you need it. If you're prepared to do that, we are all ears.
Mr. Council President, can I get to the budget document and go over?
Absolutely, please do.
Okay, so Mr. Wazika, I don't know if you're putting it up online, and just for the council and public's information, we have been presenting fairly similar numbers for the past several months at every single school committee meeting. So we can go through this. I'm sorry, Mr. President, that you are unclear of the facts. I don't know how much more clear we can be than what we were on the school committee meetings, but Mr. Wazika, if you can share the budget document for the public, I know the council has it. If you can't do the share screen, then I'll just read through the numbers and the council and school committee will just have to follow along. The
I
public,
would actually make you a co-host, and you can share your screens, and that way you can go through the way you would like to.
okay. All right, hold on.
You should be all set.
All right, hold on. It's just giving me an issue now to open. Well, let's see here. Okay. Okay, so when I'm clicking share, okay, never mind, I got it. I don't know why it's not coming up.
It's up, Sarah.
It is? Okay, for some reason my screen's just blank. So, all right, so I am going to start at the very, very top and we'll go through this. And please, if you want to stop me as I'm presenting so that there's no further miscommunication or understanding when we walk out of the meeting, we will let me know and we will stop when we go through. So pre-COVID, we had put forward a budget request of $74,368,000. As a reminder to the council and the community, in order to get our request to the $74 million, we had to cut $1.5 million of expenses just to get our ask down to the 1.8 increase in local appropriations. While I applaud the the town unions for attempting to get changes, I do want to remind everybody that the CTA union did actually give concessions. So part of the 1.5 million in savings that we had to cut, $500,000 of it came from contractual changes that we were able to make successfully with the teachers union. We had to reduce our budget at the last school committee meeting by 1.8 million when the level funded budget went down, and we are operating on last year's budget. So because we had already cut out $1.5 million of expenses from our pre-COVID budget, we really weren't left with much of a choice of where else to cut other than the 1.8. We have presented at almost every single school committee meeting the list of where the cuts were made. I also shared that with Mr. Wazika today. You'll see on that list about 0.6 million. We were able to get the additional savings from not filling 2 administrative positions. We had an assistant superintendent leave the schools. Mr. Cowart was moved up into that position. We did not backfill his administrative position. Mr. Murphy moved up into Dr. Burke's position. We did not fill Mr. Murphy's administrative position. So those were significant administrative savings by not filling key positions in the district. Because we had to cut out that 1.8 million, it brought down our pre-COVID budget to 72 million. Again, that's operating the schools on a normal day-to-day basis without all of the PPE and safety protocols that we have to adhere to now. To assist with some of the COVID response measures that we are required to make, and a reminder that the governor said all schools are ready to open in person. In order to do that, we have to adhere to the safety compliances to make sure the kids and students, the kids and staff are safe. We were given that we can use towards FY21 $1 million worth of federal funds. We were given a total of 623,000 of the ESSER funds, that first line that you see 330,000 of. But because they cut our FY20 state aid, we pushed half of it back into FY20 to backfill the gap that the state gave us. And then the balance we needed to use this year because it was the only access to funds that we had because we were operating on a level budget. We had no allocation of rainy day funds, and the $747,000 was not available to us. So we had to move some of that $330,000 from FY20 into FY21. The Supplemental Relief Act is the $50 million that the governor has announced that she's giving to all schools. Coventry's share of that is $747,000. That application has not even been approved yet. That brings our total operating budget with our reduction due to the level funded budget plus the federal funds to $73,563,000. Going down to the expenditure side, I broke it out in the same way. Our pre-COVID operating budget was $74,368,000. Again, we had to cut $1.5 million of expenses to get our expenses down to that level. When the budget was level funded or is level funded because we're operating off of last year's, the school committee had to make a decision to cut out an additional $1.8 million. We did that by the 1.6 in cuts that have been listed at multiple school committee meetings, including sports and athletics, because we don't have a lot of discretionary areas in the budget to cut. I also want to let the council community know that part of those cuts were also one-to-one device replacements for grades 6 through 12, and also 50% of the cost of necessary wiring upgrades to the district. We have federal funds available that expire this year that we were going to use to cover the balance of the network upgrades, but we will have to forfeit the 50% reimbursement because we don't have the funds at this point because we don't have a budget to move forward. So at some point, 100% of the cost of those network wirings are going to have to be borne by the town of Coventry because we will lose that federal reimbursement. That brings, and highlighted in yellow are revised COVID response costs of $3.6 million. We can go over the detail of those if you'd like on the next page. That has been whittled down, I think actually potentially to our detriment, because it does not include things like anticipated transportation costs increase. We can only have so many kids per school bus, and we are nervous that when we go into full return at the elementary schools and hybrid at the secondary, that we may have busing issues where we have to add on buses. So there are costs not even included in that $3.6 million. That brings our total expenditures, the 72 million plus the 3.6, down to 76,147,000. As we said earlier, the revenue that we're going to look at receiving is the 73,563,000. That brings a budget shortfall of 2.58. You will see that we have an estimated carryover. I never once said that we weren't going to use estimated carryover from FY20 to offset FY21. What I said to the community and to the school committee and to the town council's interest to use those monies that we saved from FY20 to offset our COVID expense costs. And the reason I said that was because if you try to offset it against our pre-COVID operations, you will further expand the structural deficit that the Coventry schools and community has. So I have always planned on using that FY20 carryover, but I said use it towards one-time costs so you don't build a structural deficit into the budget. You will see that we're backing out 990,000. I used to have 1.3 million in there. That was when we were using 100% of the ESSER funds, where you see that 330, to backfill the cut in state aid. Because we had to shift some of that into FY21, it dropped my carryover down from FY20 to 21, but it increased the federal funds that were going to FY21. That brings down a minimum rainy day fund need of 1.594 million. So if the level funded budget remains, which means that the cuts this school committee made at the last meeting remains intact, the money we would need to cover COVID related costs and operate our schools safely on an estimate basis is 1.6. Should the community wish to reinstate everything that was cut out of the budget, including sports, clubs, athletics, the 50% of the networking requirement, the 2 administrative positions that were cut, we would need our original ask of 1.8 million. That's the budget as a summary. The page behind it is detail. I don't know if the council wants me to go through that or if you're going to pause here. I hope I clarified the misconceptions, Mr. McGee, that you had. If you still have questions on where the funds are coming from, where we made the cuts, how we made the cuts, and what we need the funds for, I'm happy to stop here and answer any questions.
Does anybody from the council have any questions, any concerns concerning the budget? The recap that Sarah had just given us.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. Sarah, does the budget that you just went over take into account any of the PPE that the school department received from FEMA?
So we actually haven't received any funds from FEMA. Mr. Arnett's on the call, so we file with the town. As far as I know, the town has not gotten any reimbursements from FEMA, even though we've been tracking it. So I would say from a revenue perspective, no, and that would probably go back towards FY20. Most of what we reported for FEMA was for FY20. But as far as I know, we have not received a dime from that. If Mr. Arnett has, then I am not aware of that. It does include all of the other PPE that we need going forward. And again, I'm glad you brought that up. The PPE is a wild card as well, because we have no idea how fast we're going to burn through the items that are necessary to have in our school. But if you want to ask Mr. Arnett if anything on yet, that he would probably be better suited to answer that.
Okay, and my only other question would be is that the governor had announced at one of her press conferences that she was making $50 million available for schools in Rhode Island, and that nobody had applied. Well, very shortly thereafter, it came to light that Coventry, West Warwick, and Portsmouth had already applied, and that other districts were wading through the application process, but that was for reimbursement. The money that, and they said between the 3 communities, Coventry, West Warwick, and Portsmouth, the reimbursement applications added up to 2.4 million. Can you tell me what Coventry's portion was of that, and where did that money come from that we spent that we're asking for reimbursement on?
Yes, so, and I think if my screen is still up there, the $50 million is $747,000. And yes, you are correct. The governor did misspeak. We had filed our application yet. It's not approved, but our application was absolutely in at that point. So Coventry's allocation, the $50 million, is $747,000. I can scroll down to the second page. If you look in the middle column, this is how we have all of the federal funds allocated. Most of the $747,000 that we have allocated is related to the health and safety supplies, where you'll see the $350,000 cleaning supplies, $75,000, the technology software, purchase services for HVAC upgrades, hotspots for equitable access. So that middle column is how we have the application for our federal funds, but most of it is directly for PP&E. And yes, you're right, it is a reimbursement. So we have to spend that money first before we can request reimbursement. And I hope that that reimbursement will come soon. But because they haven't even approved the application, even though we are spending some money because schools opened, and we had to have things in place before teachers and students returned, I still can't apply for reimbursement to that. So we are floating those expenses until the Department of Ed approves our application and we can actually request reimbursement.
Okay, and I guess my next question would be for the town manager. Mr. Manager, are you still on?
I'm still here, sir.
I'm going to transfer my question from Sarah to you. PPE that we were led to believe that the school department was supplied by FEMA.
Sarah is referring to reimbursement funds. What I think Mr. Cody is asking about if you've received any PPE material and not funds, Sarah. PPE material is what he was asking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, and if I can unshare my screen and I can actually go and find the email of the inventory that was shared. But the long and short was we did receive some N95 masks, some gowns, some gloves. They gave us 1 month. That was the amount of supplies that we got. And they said, hopefully we will have more, but they can't promise that. And even when we met with the National Guard team, they instructed us, and as you heard the governor say too, that it is the community's responsibility first and foremost to take care of the needs for PPE and whatnot. And if we get in a desperate situation, then we can contact for backup. That was communicated to us both by the National Guard groups, as well as that was what the governor said, that this is a community issue. But yes, we did receive a 1 month supply of certain PPE.
Yes, Sarah, if you could you dig up that email with the inventory on it, please?
Yes, I will. Yep, and I will.
Just for my knowledge, please.
Yep, I can share it with the town manager, and he can get it out to the council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other council members who have any questions, any concerns? I see Ms. Dixon has her hands up. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week I called Mr. Arnett and wanted to understand better the use of fund balance as a potential source of money for COVID-related expenses. And I'm going to not use rainy day because it's really a misnomer. I'm going to call it fund balance because that's what it is. If Mr. Arnett is on the line, then please correct me, or Mr. Wazika, correct me if I do not understand this correctly. From what I understand, the fund balance is really the town's checking account. It's what we use to pay our bills. And that we have been hovering about 10%. We've dipped down a little bit less than that. Some communities have about 15% of their operating budget in fund balance. So we need to be very careful that we do not dip too low. In order
How much do you have?
Mr. Arnett told me that he had about, let me see.
I can answer that question right now. I went ahead and pulled that for this evening if you would like.
Yes, want to go tell him what it is? Thank you.
Sure. By the end of this week, we have an MOE distribution and the final payroll. We're looking at $10,806,000.
Which is approximately about 10%, right?
Correct. Above that 10% mark is according to overall budget, and the 0% levy budget is $107 million, which puts the difference between that 10% and the fund balance at about $84,000.
Mr. Arnett, please explain the importance of what percentage that we really need to have in fund balance in order to be in a financially secure situation.
Yes, ma'am. The rule of thumb is essentially 10% it gives you about 90 days worth of operating expenses, assuming no dollars and cents come in. It's how when we talk to Moody's, it's what they look for. They even on our phone calls mentioned how 10% is low, but they like to see a little bit higher to the 15%. So we had a little over 10% of fund balance when COVID hit. We dipped pretty significantly below that. So that's why the bills went out and those coffers came back up. So we are back to that level of 10% of where we should be operating. But again, it is to ensure the 90-day window of operations in the event that significant impact happens to expenditures.
And what happens if we go too low in the percentage of the budget that we have in the fund balance?
It comes to the event of not being able to pay your bills at times. So, for example, when debt service goes out, that went out for this month. We'll have some debt service for the school bonds that went out in the early last decade. And so that's what you're really worried about is the ebbs and flows as far as when cash comes in and when cash goes out. So the farther you reduce your reserves and that fund balance, you're going down that path of not being liquid to pay your bills.
Thank you. This is a very complex meeting because we have to talk about the school presentation, the budget, plus we need to talk about their needs for COVID. And as far as I understand, they are still requesting 1.8 million for operating expenses. And they are also asking, I believe it's 1.6 million for COVID-related expenses, which they cannot support with their budget, even within the 1.8. They do not know exactly how much they're going to get from the federal government or the state government, but they can make some estimates. So I am going to throw out an idea to the council members and also to the school committee for consideration. I, as a town council member, do not want to have our town be in a deficit situation, operating situation. I want it to be able to be stable, continue its good rating with Moody's. So we need to be very careful about what we do. But we do know that we want our students, we want our children, we want our staff members to be safe. If they are safe when they get home, our whole community will benefit, not just the students who are in the school. So I'm thinking that I would like to make a motion. It's not tonight, but when we finally do have our council meeting, I would like to make a motion that we authorize some number, and I'm not sure what that number would be, but I'm going to suggest it's going to be less than 1.6 million, that we authorize some number that can come from fund balance, in that we can't go over that maximum amount. In that after the school committee has expended all its available funds from its own accounts and federal and state sources and private sources, then the school committee could request a certain amount of money from the maximum that we are requesting. And I know that our fund balance varies and we need to take into account what's available. We need to be prudent. So that's why I would like to see us authorize a maximum amount, but after the school spends all its available money from all available sources, then they can come to us and they can ask for a certain percentage of the money that we have put aside. And then Mr. Arnett can give us an indication of whether it is prudent for us to use those funds or not, because we don't know from time to time whether we're going to have 5 million in that account or 10 million in that account or 15 million in that account. So I'm throwing out the idea that we would authorize some money to be spent from fund balance or available from fund balance that could be used for COVID-related expenses after all other sources all other sources have been expended. And then the school can come to us and ask based on need for some of that money. And then Mr. Arnett could give us his recommendation whether we have the funds to even do that. So I'm throwing that out as an idea. I'm separating out the discussion of the budget from the discussion of COVID expenses, because we know they're keeping kids safe, but keeping them all in school and getting them back to school is important. So I throw out that idea for a discussion.
Okay, is there any other council members that would have any questions, any comments? How about any school committee members?
Mrs. Bacon has her hand up.
I'm sorry, I can only see so much on the screen. I'm sorry, Ms. Bacon. Go right ahead.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, I just want you to confirm these numbers because we do have the email from REMA that did supply all the PPE. It has 91 thermometers, 9,204 child masks, 8,912 adult masks, 70 surgical masks, 35 KN95 masks, 14 face shields, 140 gowns, and 2 pallets of disinfectant ranging between, each pallet ranges between 236 gallons. Is that what you have? Just saw it come up here.
Sorry, I muted myself. I shared what we received directly from the state. I'm wondering if what you shared went to the town, because I know that the town gave us some section, but what you see on the screen is what we picked up. this is what we came from, Raj. So, Mr. Wazika, you might have to jump in because I know the town received items directly, and I know the town did share with the school department some of the specifically the cleaning supplies. But I don't, with all due respect, Ms. Bacon, I don't have that email that you have, so I can't confirm that because this is the email that we got when we picked up our supplies directly as a school department. That again, I'm sorry, might be a question for Mr. Wazika.
Okay, Ed, because it's, I just want to make sure that we have, the town wouldn't need children's masks, correct? We wouldn't be. Ed?
Deb, Mrs. Bacon, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yes, no, I have from Rima, we have the email and it says child masks that were picked up, 9,204, but Sarah has on here 2,301.
My numbers from Rima, from Director Pappas, is the 91 thermometers, the 9,204 child masks, 8,912 adult masks. The surgical masks are at 70. The KN95s are at 35. Face shields are at 14. Gowns are at 140, and then 2 pallets of the disinfectant that ranged anywhere between 288 to 360 gallons, depending on the size of the pallets. That's what I received from Director Pappas.
Okay, does the town have any of these supplies or?
When it comes to the one thing, I'm unaware of any of these coming to us. The one thing I am aware of, we have 3 additional pallets of disinfectant that the town received that are not listed as this. I asked specifically, what did the school department receive? Because I was curious to see what they were getting. And that's what they sent me. And I'm not saying that Sarah's wrong or I'm wrong. This is what I got from the director who got it from his project manager. So this is
May I
based
ask a
on
question?
their info.
I can confirm that this is what the school department picked up, and I'm certain that I know Mr. Martin is watching the call, and I'm positive he will pick up the other information, the other items listed. I do know that we were told by the town that they received disinfectant and that they were going to give the school some. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say what you just read went directly to the town. And they did share some of the disinfectant spray with us. This is the information that we picked up, and I can confirm that is what we picked up.
Mrs. Mangiarelli, I don't want to get into a back and forth on it. I handled the call. We picked up 2 cases. We picked up the school department's disinfectant for them because we were going down there. They picked up, our DPW department picked up 5 pallets, 3 for us and the 2 for you guys that they dropped off over at the school department. Again, as far as the mask, I have no direct knowledge. I know on the disinfectant, that's the way the breakdown came down on what we picked up. We were earmarked for 3, you were earmarked for 2, we got 5, and we dropped the 2 off for you. But again, I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to go back and forth because again, I've only got the data that I've got. You got it from your people. I don't know which one is accurate, but what I got from the REMA, I'm taking it from them. So that's where it came from.
And the reason why I'm asking, because on that one slide that you showed us, Sarah, you're looking at $357,319 for health and safety supplies. So just seeing this, and I was just wondering if that number would be coming down because of all the supplies that REMA has supplied.
No. So I think even if you looked at the items that I had listed, and again, we'll have our 2 directors of facilities touch base to see where the large shipment went. Again, I can confirm that this is what we had picked up. But even if you look at that list, I'm going to share my screen one more time. If you look at the frequency, they give us a 1-month supply. Okay, so back in May, our nurses had gotten together with a very early budget of supplies that they would need and their estimated burn rate, and it was about 42,000, and they were hoping that would stretch them 2 months. So no, we have, and we spoke with the National Guard. I spent a decent amount of time looking up burn rate schedules on the CDC website. We have no idea how fast we are going to burn through supplies. Hand sanitizer and cleaner are not cheap. and they need to be in every single classroom. They need to be used constantly throughout the classrooms. We're constantly wiping down desks. We're doing meals in classrooms. So no, my fear is actually that $357,000 could potentially be too low, but we have no way of estimating that until we start seeing what the burn rate is. So we did set up some inventory tracking so that we can have our nurses and our principals and custodial staff submit requests for forms so we can kind of monitor how often they are requesting things like sanitizer, gowns, masks. Again, a lot of these masks are disposable, so it's going to be a one and done. Even looking at the N95 masks, it's not just all of our special education and nursing staff, even some of our career and tech students have to wear the N95 mask. We gave lots of N95 masks to the state. So to get 35 back in a district our size is kind of a drop in the bucket. So I'd say that we are taking everything we can get. We actually just had a very large donation of face shields, which was fantastic. We have some employees whose spouses work for a company that gave us face shields. So we are absolutely taking every single donation, but I think to keep up with the requirements, the turnover and the number of kids and adults that we are going to have in one area for a good part of the day, I think that those numbers could be low, but that's the best guess that we can put right now.
Mr. President,
Yes.
as a town council member, I don't think that we should be counting thermometers or counting masks. There has to be a certain level of trust, and the school department knows how many masks they're getting. They can't completely accurately tell us how many they're going to need come December or what have you. I've thrown an idea on the table, which we haven't heard any discussion on, but that is to give some money from the fund balance, set a maximum amount, whatever that might be, whatever people are comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with 1.8 or 1.6 yet, but allow some discretion here. And my discussion point is, once they have expended all of their sources for what they need, they can then come and ask for some money from the fund balance. And that will be our ability to give the money, because we don't know, based on finances, how things are going to be month to month. And we can rely on Mr. Arnett to tell us what shape we're in. We can rely on the school department to tell us how much they need. We're not giving the whole amount out. We're not authorizing the whole amount. It's as needed basis. And as I said before, we want our kids to be safe, but if they're safe, the whole community will benefit from it. And I would like to hear some comments about what you think of that idea. And I don't think we should be counting thermometers or who got how many boxes or what have you. Everyone's trying to do the best they can. So can we start to move this discussion forward about how we as a community can help the school children and the staff get the COVID supplies that they need?
And I understand we should be counting thermometers. I get that, but there's a list of COVID expenses, and the council members have the right to ask, where it's been. Mr. Waziko, I see you have your hand up. Would you, you're on mute.
Mrs. Mangiarelli, in reference to the 3.6 for COVID expenses and an ask for almost 1.6 from the town, how much of that 1.6 are you projecting or thinking is going to be MOE that's going to have an effect on future budgets as well? I mean, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm seeing almost $2.1 million in additional salary expenses out of that 3.6. So what are we looking at? Because that effect is going to have long-term consequences on all of the budgets going forward. So what are we looking at on that?
Yeah, so, and I think that's somewhat tough to answer too. I think absolutely everything has a long-term effect right now, and we really don't know where a lot of things are going to land. So in looking at some of the staffing costs, some of the things, I don't know if they will go away. I would say custodial costs. We are short-staffed custodians. We started the COVID budget with requesting 12. We dropped it down to 9. At some of our bigger schools, we have, for a good chunk of the day, 1 custodian on staff to clean a significant amount of square footage. And now we're looking at a lot of services to make sure it's sanitized. So from an MOE, if I had to pick, and again, this is just my gut of what I think may not to go away. I think cleaner classrooms, better sanitizing is probably going to stick around for a while. So I would think that the custodian costs could be something that we're going to have to grapple with. From a supervisory assistance, a lot of those are for in-classroom lunch. So, you know, if maybe next year we can have larger gatherings, then maybe that would go away. If we could get kids to eat back in the cafeteria in larger groups, that could potentially go away. Registered nurses, again, if it's not in a dire situation and we're all a little bit more used to that, that could potentially go away. Substitute costs.
Can you give me a ballpark number on what you think we'd be looking at?
Well, I can take this list and total it up, but I can tell you that I haven't been presenting this to the school committee as MOE because we were already at the cap for MOE under regular operations, and we knew that. We cut the 1.8 out. So while we're talking, I can go through and take a list, pull a list together and do a ballpark estimate. But again, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the governor is going to regulate going forward. I don't know what's going to happen to the virus, you know, so I can make my best guess.
And that's my point, because even if we were able to give you the 1.6 million out of the reserves and give it to you for this year, and then even if half of that, 800,000 or 900,000 of that actually becomes part of MOE. Next budget year, you're already starting behind the 8 ball by $900,000 that we have to make up for if it's MOE, even though it came out of the reserves. That's now added onto your budget. We're looking at 900,000 plus whatever else you're going to need next year. We're pushing to the max cap already by giving it to you this way. If it's ultimately going to become part of MOE next year, and I'm just concerned about what it's going to lead to if we do go that route, and this is going to be long-term and permanent fixed costs that are going to become part of the budget. That's why I'm asking now, what percentage of that, you know, is the school department willing to make an agreement that whatever you get that way is not MOE, is not going to be considered part of MOE, and would be a one-time and one-time only, you know, a fund to the schools? Because again, like I said, if you're eligible this year to go 1.9, which is what you're looking at is 1.9. If you're already adding 8 or 900 behind this year, that has to become part of that for next year. You're limited to $1 million more that you can ask for, that you can ask for. That's going to be nowhere near enough, and we all know that's not going to happen. From now to all we're doing is pushing this forward into future budgets that are going to make a humongous problem for everybody. So we would need to know what amount of this we're looking at, and you would need to go forward. My second question, Sarah, is we spoke about it this afternoon in reference to those 2 cuts that were made in the administrators. You cut the budget to become equal and be balanced, and you cut $1.6 million or almost $1.7 million. You're still asking for $1.9 million. So would you be bringing those 2 administrators back online if you got the $1.9 million? You'd be backfilling those positions, or would you not be doing that? Or is your request reduced by that and bring it down to whatever you cut the budget the other day, which would be about less than 1.7 million?
So let me start with your first area of concern. And I will, you know, while people are asking other questions, I will total up what I think could be a potential MOE. As far as starting off in the hole for next year, I think we need to be a little bit realistic and say that the second the level funded budget was passed and we had already cut out 1.5 million and had to cut out another 1.8, we're already starting in the hole for next year. Because if we stay level funded, we certainly won't be able to look to bring any of those things back even in the following year, because we will have had to make those reductions to get a balanced budget. We know we're seeing rising costs in other areas. That's why a maintenance of effort base is so important. As far as, and also why we've continued with a pre-COVID budget, so we had some baseline of what real expenditures actually are. COVID was thrown on us. I mean, it was thrown on the entire world. So to think that we are going to be able to accommodate everything that needs to be done within the same budget constraints as a pre-COVID world, I think is unrealistic. Not to mention, again, that we're only receiving 91% of our FY21 state aid. If the state, I know it's not, but as a community, we have to be ready to deal with that. So if you want to strip everything out and we still have to legally respond to make sure that our schools are safe, we are in quite a big hole no matter what. And that's why I have had the same message since the second COVID started, is that no matter what happened, we needed to keep in mind what pre-COVID operations were. And even if things went like a distance learning or whatnot, we have a lot of areas that need to be invested in, such as our facilities, to keep things moving forward. As far as coming up with arrangements for what's going to count towards maintenance of effort and what's not going to count, I know our things are on the line. I would actually argue that several years ago, Coventry did that with the schools in town, where I think they gave the schools 1.2 million, but they agreed that only 600,000 was going to count as MOE. I can say right now, if I was here, I never would have recommended that, because unless you have one-time expenditures of that $600,000, you're making a structural deficit right there. So those are my concerns on your first question. As far as your second question about what was cut out, and as you and I talked today, yes, those positions were cut out. We knew going into FY21, even pre-COVID, because we had to make such cuts to get through, that we were probably looking at not filling those positions to come back. Now, if that's the decision of the council, where they're going to say, okay, we're only going to give you the almost 7 million that you cut out, that's on the cut sheet that I gave you, that's fine. I do want you to know, though, since Friday, in order to accommodate the class sizes between distance learning and in person, we've had to increase our teaching FTEs by 2.2 FTEs for a total of about $160,000. Again, we have to do that with class sizes are what they are. We've had to increase 0.2 positions because now we have people teaching kids both at home and in school. So, I've said this to the school committee, I've said it to the council, whatever is given forward, we'll make adjustments. I just don't know if it's the school and the town that this community actually wants. So the budget was level funded, it failed. We're operating on a level funded budget. The school had to make cuts, none of them ones that they wanted, none of them being ones that I think the community stands for, to get rid of clubs and athletics. But as far as making tough decisions, I think the school department has done it, and it's not favorable decisions by any stretch. And I can say it, I think it's horrible being a parent with young kids that are about to come up, knowing that I'm recommending decisions that are dismantling the school department that my kids are about to go through. So, again, whatever the council decides to give, they decide to give. Just one other point, going back to Ms. Dixon's and Mr. Arnett's, you're talking about fund balance on a cash basis. So you're looking at the cash on hand. I don't know what the town is projecting for FY21. I can tell you that I have contacted both the Department of Ed and the Auditor General. We're legally required to let them know within 5 days of when we think that we're going to run a budget set. They told me to wait and get through this meeting so I can see, because we will have to put on notice that I think we'll run a deficit in this fiscal year. And again, we will, without a budget and without an funding stream for our COVID response. But typically, fund balance is the sum of any previous year's earnings plus any surplus or minus any projected deficits. So your fund balance doesn't actually change on a month-to-month basis unless you're on a cash basis. We're not, we're on modified accrual. So your cash balance, your cash on hand fluctuates, but your surplus does not, unless you're projecting a surplus for the year or projecting a deficit for the year. I don't know what the town is projecting on their side, so I can't confirm that the fund balance, or it's been alluded to as the rainy day fund, is changing on a month-to-month basis, but I can say that the cash position is changing on a month-to-month basis. But those are two slightly different things, and I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Okay, are there any other, excuse me, are there any other, yes, I see, let me see, I see, first of all, let me get the solicitor. I see he's raising his hands, maybe give us some legal opinion. Go ahead.
I just wanted to explore the point that I think the town manager was trying to make on maintenance of effort. And I certainly welcome input from John Anderson, counsel to the school committee on this. But it seems to me one of the attributes of maintenance of effort that you can actually read in the statute, which is Title 16, Chapter 7, Section 23. It's annual non-recurring expenditures. Non-recurring to me means expenditures that are not COVID-related expenditures. They're not non-recurring. So I think, again, I'd like to hear from John, but I think if we're making some adjustments to make this work, I think we can pretty much agree, unless John disagrees with me, that a lot of these things we're trying to work out are probably non-recurring, and we might have a little more flexibility on the MOE than we might think. John or anybody else? I think it's worth to have a discussion about that.
I would agree with you. The 16.7-23 says that a community that experiences a non-recurring expenditure for its schools may deduct the non-recurring expenditure in computing its maintenance of effort. The next sentence in it says that the deduction of the non-recurring expenditures shall be with the approval of the commissioner. My expectation is that this problem of maintenance of effort is going to occur in 39 cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island, and that the Commissioner of Education will provide some guidance as to what's a non-recurring expenditure and what's not a non-recurring expenditure. So I would agree with Mr. Gorham that there is some flexibility here, subject to the approval of the Commissioner of Education as required by state law.
Okay. We have the screen put up. Who put the screen up?
This is the while we were discussing that, I put up the COVID and what the personnel costs and whether or not those are going to turn into reoccurring. And that's why I was asking with Sarah on what we're looking at and how much of this potentially is going to fall into that, because we are going to create a deficit spending right off the bat, sending this out of fund balance to send this to them if it is going to be a non-singular event. If it's going to be reoccurring and MOE, we will create a deficit spending by giving this out of the fund balance this year. That's why I'm curious on the amount that we're talking about. That needs to be looked at.
Okay, I did see, let me just get the screen here. I just, Murray had his hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. President. So first off, I'll set a tone of like basically saying that we're not the enemy here, right? We wanted to come tonight with transparency. If you've watched for the past month, we've had extensive meetings with the public. We've gone through a brutal amount of questions on the school reopening. We've answered a ton of budget questions. So we want to be transparent, as Sarah said. I will address the 1.8 million of our request, but I think with respect to my counterpart, I'll stick to the 1.6. I won't speak for my other members, I'll let them chime in, but I know that as presented, I know myself never assumed that any of the emergency funding would be on a maintenance of effort. That it would be a one-time emergency funding, quote unquote, rainy day fund as we were calling it, but I knew that was fund balance. That would be for this emergency situation. Well, let's be honest, we all know this is a difficult situation for all of us, right? We know that the state has been neglectful in their duties to the local municipalities. We know that the federal government is on vacation and that we're on an island, but we're all on an island together. And so the tone set of, this is something that we're coming at and we're trying to push the responsibilities off. We've had to make extremely tough decisions to even get to our previous budget request. So as far as Ms. Dixon's proposal, with respect to her, I would say at least it's a creative answer, right? Trying to start addressing the problem. And I think we all need to try to stick to that topic. I would say that since it is a serious proposal from a council member, I think from my position, all things being equal, I would consider that as a positive development, right? We need money. We know that. We need an injection. If that pathway is that, if it makes the town side comfortable that we're doing it as an as-needed basis, like a line of credit, that way that some of those expenses could be vetted, then that, from my position, would be fine. And I think that that's a reasonable request. I agree that I don't think this would be something that would be on maintenance of effort. There are positions, I did question that in our school committee meetings. Sarah knows that, Craig knows that. I had my own qualms, and I was very clear that I did not expect those positions to extend beyond COVID. The problem is we don't know how long COVID will last. And so there will be a tipping point because the town can't shoulder this. We all know this. Even if the town does it in the short term, and this was on maintenance of effort, there isn't enough money next year we could even levy to do it. It's not going to happen. So all we're asking for right now is some support to get through the school reopening, because there are a ton of parents, sports aside, that just want to go back to work, myself included, that need to go make a salary to pay their taxes. And if we do not support them, they're not going to pay their taxes. The other problem we have is we're going to have kids leaving the district. And for every kid that homeschools, goes to charter, goes to a CTE program elsewhere, we lose that money. And if you think our deficit's bad now, wait till next year if those kids leave the district. So I am, Ms. Dixon, I am supportive of your request. I think that if that is a pathway the council as a whole could see fit to approve, I am in support.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murray, for your, I just want you to know that we're not the enemy either. We do want the kids to go to school safely. We understand the state has put us in a heck of a predicament. We're trying as a council to do what is affordable, for the taxpayers. And we don't want our kids to be unsafe. We don't want our teachers and staff to be unsafe. We're in a heck of a mess right now. We still, to this day, don't know what we're getting for state aid. We don't know what's coming in the future. It's very difficult for us to be responsible and present a budget not even knowing what we're getting. I'm for Ms. Dixon's proposal too. I think it's a good idea. We were very concerned about all this being put on maintenance of effort. And with it not being on maintenance of effort, it's something to consider. I mean, we do have to solve this. We're not going to solve it by, we need money. We need money to solve it. We can't tax our way out of this. I understand that. But we're not the enemy either. We're in a mess. We're trying to get through this. Does anybody else have any comments? I see Deb Bacon's here. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Carrie. Carrie, you just touched upon that. That was my question that I have. It's my understanding that the state is not going to be voting on their budget until after the election. So how difficult is it going to be for us to come up with a budget, both on the town and the school side? So, I know this is going to be very challenging, not knowing how much aid the schools are going to be getting. So that's just, I know no one probably has an answer to that. My other question is, Sarah, am I understanding correctly that the federal funds, the governor has not released them to the municipality, to the schools yet?
So the application release was extremely delayed. So we just got official confirmation that the 42 million that she gave schools, that again was cut from state aid. So it was really a wash. She did not, she offered that in the spring. We just got that approved yet today. So the applications are out, but I haven't been able to request reimbursement. So she can't release funds until applications are released and until applications are applied for and approved, and then we request reimbursement. So there's definitely some misconceptions going on about the timeline and the availability of funds to schools. And I think I was just as frustrated as you when they announced that they're not going to make any decisions on the budget until November, because unfortunately, while we don't know our revenue stream, we have to have kids back in school. So we know that we are going to be incurring expenditure expenditures. And I said this to the school committee and I said it to the director of finance at RIDE. It's a very unnerving position to be a finance director where you have to knowingly spend money without an identified revenue source. And that's unfortunately the positions that all districts were put in when funds weren't made available, but we were told to reopen and reopen with more expense.
Okay, I'm sorry, because I thought that she was holding funds back. So I'm glad that she's not holding funds back. So, because I was going to suggest if that's the case, then perhaps the school and the town should be suing the governor. But I do have another question. Luke, you had brought this up also, you touched upon this. You have about 30, my understanding, 30% have opted for distant learning for the year. You did talk about homeschooling. Do you have a number of how many families have decided to homeschool? How many have left to go to another district? And how many have left to go to private schools? Do you have those numbers? Because I'm just trying to figure out to see how many have will be in open. So it already looks like you're going to be down 30%. So I was wondering if you had a breakdown of those numbers.
I don't have it in front of me because we proved those in executive session. We don't.
I don't have those.
Oh, I'm
Donna
sorry.
McDonald
But
has.
we have tracked it and they are netted. We do discuss it in executive session. I'll defer to Mr. Levis on this because he's doing the homeschool.
We have, yeah, we have approximately, correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. McDonald, but I believe we have about 77 new students that are homeschooled this year. So this crisis, it's not about next year, it's already impacting us. We saw what happened last year with an increase of students going to CTE programs, and we talked about that. With everything going on with the budget, the uncertainty, we've had, like I said, we have 77 new homeschooled students. We have students we were looking at today. We have more students going out of district for CTE programs than we have coming in. We're finding students are going to do anything they can do, and rightfully so, to try to go to a place where they can play sports. This is already impacting us greatly, and it started last year.
What's the number, Craig? What's the number that you have that have left the district to go to other communities, to other districts? What's that number?
I can tell you between the new home school and the pathways is probably about 150 students.
How many? I'm sorry.
Approximately 150 students that we have, and that number will increase.
Okay, and how many have left to go to private schools?
That I do not know, the private school. In terms of like a LaSalle or Hendricken, that I don't have that number. Some of those students don't register with us. Typically, the homeschool students.
They're
right.
The request to get their records. So, okay.
But I think the 177 is significant in itself.
It is.
And it's just going to increase. And so we're in that situation where, and I've said this, and I don't want to take your time, Ms. Bacon, but we have families moving into this community, as you know, paying premium, price for homes. And, they're coming here with families and expecting a quality education. We're at that fork in the road, as Sarah had said, in terms of where we're at, in terms of funding moving forward. Many districts are in that situation, but I believe, we are in dire straits right now.
Here's my other question. Craig, you can probably answer this, or maybe Kathy. The 1.6 million that you have proposed to the school committee, when did they vote on that? Has that been voted on by the school committee?
In terms of our budget?
Yeah, the COVID expenses for the 1.6 million. Did the school committee vote on that? Can anyone?
I know we've presented it several times. We've reduced it. I don't know if we voted on the 1.6.
We voted on the budget.
You voted on the 1.6 million for that?
Was that a combined vote? I honestly, some of these meetings have been 5 hours long, so to be honest with you, I can't remember off the top of my head.
So I think what ultimately ended up happening, if I remember correctly, so we have presented a pre-COVID budget and a COVID budget somewhat separately and combined at every meeting. And Donna McDonald, you might remember this, but if I remember correctly, the school committee approved the $1 million of federal expenditures. Where we were running into a jam is I was having to present a $1.6 million expenditure with no funding. So I didn't know how to ask the school department to approve a budget with a budget deficit. So some of this ultimately is going to rely on identifying a funding stream, which would have come from the town situation, or, you know, we had hoped for another stimulus package. But, and I know John's on the line too, but if I remember correctly, we have always presented what we thought our full expenditures were going to be pre-COVID and COVID, but I didn't have a revenue line to offset, so I couldn't present a balanced budget. If I'm misspeaking, please somebody correct me. So I would say that the school is fully aware, but they
Madam
voted
Chair.
on the federal portion.
Madam Chair, I believe we did vote on that at the last meeting when we were discussing this very issue. And I made the motion that we should ask for 1.6 million and 1.8 million for maintenance of effort. 1.6 million in the rainy day fund and 1.8 million or 1.883 million for operating expenses.
I
Maintenance
respectfully
of effort.
disagree. I think we discussed it.
But there was no
in length, but I don't believe we voted on it. We'd
All
have
right,
to go
James.
back and check the minutes.
I would
Yes.
agree with my counterpart.
Yeah, we'd have
I
to
don't
check
believe
those.
we approved the 1.6. We had discussion, but we never
Okay.
formally voted. And I think it was to Sarah's point that we're, you know, I guess you could say the same thing in the budget, but the budget is what we're putting forth. We actually level funded the budget and brought it back by 1.8 million. We couldn't vote to add money that we don't have.
Right.
I actually made the motion, if I recall.
Yes, Donna, you did.
An X amount of money that we approved. We didn't approve the entire thing.
That's true. That is true.
Sarah?
Just to
sorry.
clarify too, we had a discussion on an initial COVID budget. And that had been, and we had a separate, I think it was 3-hour meeting just on that COVID budget.
Mm-hmm.
And we had many questions. And at the end of that, we ended up approving, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, 1.1. That was the ESSER funds and the 747,000 because we knew that was committed, even though we didn't have cash flow. Cash flow is a different story, which is our pinch right now because we don't carry fund balance. So we're basically stealing from our budget right now. Funds, we don't know when we're going to get them back. We have a commitment that they'll come back, but to be honest, you can hear that we're getting reimbursements now from 3 months ago. So
Okay, I see Councilwoman Bacon has her hand up, so please go ahead.
In the, Luke, you touched upon that. That was going to be my next question. The reimbursements, my understanding was they're 75%, 25%, or have you learned something different? Are they at 100%?
I don't know. My understanding was 100%, 747,000 was committed COVID specific, 100% reimbursement.
I
correct,
think Ms.
Sarah?
Bacon's talking, I think Ms. Bacon are you speaking about the FEMA funds, Mrs. Bacon?
Yes, I'm speaking
funds?
about the FEMA funds,
Oh.
yes.
Mr. Arnett can respond to that.
Yeah, that goes to the town, I believe.
So I actually, as of at 4:25, as I was heading out, because I'm up in Massachusetts, but I was on the phone with FEMA and they were looking at the expenses. We are combining the expenses to get reimbursements. This school and the town for full costs. There are some costs that are going back and forth as of today with FEMA. We have not received any funds, and to your question, Ms. Bacon, it is 75% reimbursable, not the full 100%. But as of this time, we have not received any. Our initial submission was about 97,000. Some of it came out as not applicable, which some of it got removed down. So again, back and forth, and I will have I'm going to have a discussion with Ms. Mangiarelli tomorrow regarding some of their requests and an email that I just received. But we're still hammering that down.
So some of these COVID expenses, we may be on the hook for them.
That is correct.
Okay, so would we be able to, the school committee and the town council, can we have a breakdown of all of that? What is going to be at 75%? What's going to be, we're going to be having to,
We can definitely submit the, and Sarah has is keeping a tally of all related materials that are COVID-related expenses. And I did see some of them on the second sheet on her budget presentation that it seemed to correlate exactly to what I saw there too. So I would say that we could definitely have a breakdown, an itemized breakdown of what we have submitted.
okay, that'll be terrific. And just another question, I'm sorry, Sarah. So the 1.6 million for the COVID expenses, you said earlier about transportation, those costs could go up. The health and safety supplies could go up. And then I know you had a vote tonight about raising the salaries for the substitutes. I'm sorry, I didn't get to see that. I'm not sure what happened there, but did that pass?
Okay, so that was tabled for further discussion, so we can go over that. So
So
this.
we
I'm just-
voted on the one motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. We did vote on the one motion, which was the CTA subs. I forgot that was voted. Sorry.
So I'm just wondering, is this 1.6 million for COVID expenses accurate, or will this number be going up?
So as I said at the beginning, my concern is that it could go up. Transportation is a wild card. We can only have, there's all sorts of stipulation, 1 kid per seat, unless they're in a family or in a certain neighborhood or a certain stable pod. So we're working out bus routes still for when we come back in. That is definitely a concern. Substitute costs is definitely a concern. We have a hard time filling subs on a regular basis, which is why we brought forward increasing the sub rate. A lot of surrounding communities are going that direction. And we had a very, very hard time getting subs pre-COVID. We're having a hard time filling vacant positions now for existing staff. The other areas that I am concerned about is as there's shift between in-person learning and distance learning, if it's going to throw off class sizes. As I had said earlier, we had to increase FTEs by 2.2 just since last week in order to make sure that we had coverage for all of the in-person versus distance learning. So I think that this is our best guesstimate, knowing that we have exposure in areas. I wish that we could have a better answer truly for that, but we just don't. This is all brand new to us, and we're trying to learn literally as we go along.
Is it
Okay,
right? I'm sorry, Carrie. I'm sorry, one more follow-up. Regarding the subs, did you do a fiscal impact study on that? Because I'm assuming that's you said that we've had that in the past, I'm assuming this is gonna carry on into the future. Is there any type of a fiscal impact study that you did? For the
So as far as carrying on to the future, the memorandum of understanding sunsets June 30th, 2021. So the intent was not to have that carry in perpetuity. It was to address a significant issue that we have right now. And Mr. Pearson did ask, so if I looked at what we would have spent on a normal year last year, if it had been a normal year, it would have been about $80,000. And again, this is ballpark because there's a lot of factors that go into that. At the rate of 145, we would have been close to 1.3 million. So yes, this is a significant increase in sub costs. Unfortunately, where we're running into an issue is if people come out or if people arrive at work and we have to send them home, we can't leave classes of kids unsupervised. So we absolutely have to have a body in there. We're trying to not disrupt stable pods. So even using teachers as covers could be a concern. So this is one of those expenses that I don't know how we necessarily get around because we can't leave classes unsupervised.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
okay, thank you. I see.
Thank you.
Mr. McGee?
Has her hands up. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for all the questions. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the information you provided. And Ms. Mangiarelli, thank you for correcting me on fund balance and what that means. I appreciate it. Didn't get my CPA yet, but it was very helpful. But the beauty of my proposal is this. The council approves some number. It would be 1.6 million down, whatever the council decides to do. If the school committee doesn't need the money, then they just don't request it because they use all the other sources that they can. If they need more money than what we approve, they can always come back and we can always vote on another potential proposal. So there's always possibility to come back to the council depending upon the situation. And I think we need to keep it a little bit flexible. If the council members like this potential proposal that I am proposing, then I'm happy to work with our legal counsel to frame a motion that not only gives protection to the school committee, but also protects the integrity of our financial situation for the town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dixon. Is there anybody else that has any comments, any questions?
Mr. McGee, hello?
Yes, who's speaking?
Mr. Cody.
Gary,
Okay, I don't see you on. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Cody.
thank you. First of all, I would like to commend Councilwoman Dixon for coming up with that idea. I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that I could absolutely get on board with. I don't know what that final number would be. I have a concern with it because I know that Moody, as our bond rating company, if our fund balance drops below what they consider the standard amount, it could affect our bond rating moving forward. We've had trouble with that in the past. I hate to see us have trouble with that again in the future. But Mrs. Dixon's idea could absolutely work as long as we're not going to jeopardize the fund balance in the amount that it affects our bond rating. The other thing is did I hear the governor today say that she was limiting interscholastic sports for high school and junior high schools in the upcoming fall season? Does anybody from the school committee know the answer to that? I thought I heard that in her press conference today. And what sports exactly is she allowing to move forward?
Is there anybody from the school that want to answer that? Or know the answer?
Yeah. I didn't listen to the governor's press conference today, so I can't
Okay.
answer
Yeah,
that, Mr. Cody.
either today.
The last I had heard, and again, I didn't listen to her today, but the last I had heard, the sports that we're going to be running was boys soccer, girls soccer, boys and girls cross country, and girls tennis. I don't know if she said something different today, to be honest with you, but that was the last information that I had.
No,
Middle
that's
school sports were cut, though.
Yes, all sports were cut.
I'm sorry, they weren't. Middle school sports were canceled. I shouldn't say cut, but they did make that decision earlier this month.
okay.
So,
All right. And listen, I just want everyone from the school committee to know that I don't consider any of you as my enemy. I have respect for all of you folks. And I have personally, and I'm only going to speak for myself, I can't speak for my fellow council members. I think the taxpayers were clear in the last all day vote that went forward that they would tolerate a tax increase. And I don't have any problem with that. I mean, my taxes go up just like everybody else's every time there's a tax increase. But I do want to state publicly, and I want to be honest with you folks, that I would expect that any money that we increase the budget by to cover expenses for the school department, that we would also increase the budget by that amount to put some money back on the municipal side. Because in some of the departments, not in all, but in some of the departments, we made draconian cuts to get down to a zero-based budget. And I would like to see some money be put back in the municipal side as well. I don't know what the number is going to be as far as a tax increase, but I think moving forward, I think it's pretty well set in stone that that's what the taxpayers wanted. And as the council member who got elected to represent the taxpayers in the town of Coventry, I expect moving forward that I will be voting to approve a budget that calls for a tax increase, and we will put it before an all-day referendum. I don't know if that'll give the school department everything it's asked for, and I'm not talking COVID money. I'm talking about everything your ask is for in your budget request. But I expect moving forward that the taxpayers are going to have a decision to make, and we're going to go to another all-day referendum. And I'm going to hope that it passes, whatever that number turns out to be. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
President, when you have,
I'm sorry, who else raised their hand?
Labassiniere.
Labassiniere. Okay, go ahead, Greg.
First of all, I want to thank the school committee and the administration for a tremendous amount of work. It's a lot of work that's there. And again, just to reiterate my my colleagues on the council's concerns for the taxpayer. That's what we're looking out for at the end. A couple of questions that I have. Again, the emergency COVID funds. I think it's definitely something that it's not just a school issue. That's a town issue. It's that's on all of us. Digging into the fund balance is definitely dangerous when we're floating very close to that point. The minimum areas that the bond council requires. But I do like the idea. I think that we definitely have to face that and then be extremely diligent on the state and federal government and looking for reimbursement to get these funds covered. I do have a question regarding two of the items that we discussed in the emergency area, because that seems to be the bone right now that we've all been working on. And that goes with I'm looking at transportation, which is all questionable, and the substitute teacher areas, which we're having to put a lot of that in there. And I've got one other one too, based on we were talking homeschooled people. As far as the transportation, how much of that is mandated? Is that something that you could have people who are that volunteers could volunteer to if they're bringing their own children to school, to have carpools and other things happening along with that? I don't know if that's something that is absolutely required to provide transportation, especially the additional transportation. On the second question, and again, I pose this to all of you and any of you that might answer it, on the substitute teachers. Are we adding bodies because you may have a class that actually has kids in class and virtually? So are we having the same type of class which is requiring 2 teachers now instead of 1 teacher? And then what is the negative effect as far as homeschooling? I mean, if someone decides in the town of Coventry to homeschool, are they, are we now paying somebody else for this homeschooling? Because I know if I send my child to a private school, whether it's LaSalle or Henrican, there was no consideration or taxes or paying someone else for that. Those are 3 questions that I have right now.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Levis, you will be able to answer that for us?
Yes. So in terms of the first question around transportation, Mr. Lawson here, that's a great question. We sent out a survey. We asked families to, volunteer in terms of where they're going to take transportation or not. And Mr. Coward actually sent that survey out. The reality is we've had many people say that they weren't sure. So we're limited to half the buses, so 36 students on a 72-student bus. We have encouraged people to, use other means, but until we start bringing students back, I think Mr. Anderson was telling me a story about another district where they're already full. They brought back, and they have like 30% of their elementary students in the school, but they all take transportation, so those buses are already full. So that's an area we just really have to monitor. And as we transition more students back, we'll get a better handle on that. So that's that's the first question. In terms of the substitute, first that the substitute, we increased the rate to $145 a day, but it's temporary for this year. And the whole idea is that because we're in such a volatile situation where staff could be sent home, staff could be quarantined, we need to have individuals in front of our students. And so we're concerned is we already have holes that we can't fill right now. So we're trying to expand our pool of individuals. And Mr. Anderson gave a great example in our school committee meeting about, we're trying to encourage individuals who have bachelor's degrees because the state has changed their certification requirements. So try to expand that pool, not just to compete solely for certified teachers. But we are concerned, right? Like currently we have positions that aren't filled that we need to fill. And as we transition more students back, if we don't have those positions filled, we're already, it's already an issue. So that was the whole idea with that. And I apologize, I forgot the middle question there.
It would have been, are more people added because a class might be split between distance virtual learning and in class?
So we made a commitment to this community early on before the governor or the commission had directed that we were going to offer the opportunity for students to fully distance learn. We also offered a lot more flexibility. Some districts said August 1st, you have to make your decision. We had families making their decision up to last week. So we're offering teachers that are teaching solely distance learning, but we also have the in-school. As students shift, we have some requirements in terms of students choose to come back or students go to distance learning. We may have to support both. We may have to add a class in school, but we also may have to add just because 3 or 4 students leave distance learning to come in school, that may put us over the numbers we want. So we'll have to add an additional course. So that could be additional expenses. But then you mentioned about homeschooling. Homeschool students, we have 2 major organizations based in Coventry. So on any given year, we have approximately 130, 140 homeschool. And they do it for, a lot of positive reasons. They do an incredible job. But we've lost a lot of family students this year because families have the ability to stay home. Like they said, there's a strong support in Coventry. We don't receive money for those individuals. They don't, we have a policy that we put together that's pretty clear in terms of what we can provide them and how we provide them. But they don't receive, they're not receiving additional benefits from us. It's like going to a LaSalle or
all right, so how is that a negative?
The
conversation I was listening to, it sounded like it was a negative, very negative that people were homeschooling on revenue or a cost type of base.
It is a cost because we don't receive that per pupil expenditure. It's not negative at all. We have some incredible families that believe strongly in homeschool.
From a budgetary aspect,
but we lose the per pupil.
If I may interject, and because I brought it up, we're losing that money, but what's been said is the same thing as the money follows the child, is that we still have to keep the building lights on. We still have to do all the overhead, right? So whether that class is 25 kids or 23 kids, 2 are homeschooled, we still have all the overhead that's not recaptured.
I understand in class, but
so we're not losing the, let's say, that money. I mean, we have to still pay the same teacher. We have to pay we have to cover the same overhead, but we're losing kids in those classrooms. So there's a tipping point. If we had,
are we talking a reimbursement or a level from the state? Is that what it is? That money?
It's the money from the state. It's the money from the state.
I mean, if they're living in town, they're still paying the same taxes. Correct. But even homeschooling, it doesn't roll through from the state to the town.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So if I can interject, so if we have a homeschool student, we lose them in our state education aid. We lose them on the revenue side. If we have kids that are going to charter schools and other public school districts, then we're paying on average
I understand that.
$15,000 out of pocket. So so we lose on either the revenue or we increase our expenditures, but we're still paying those classroom teachers who are teaching the other 20 kids in there.
Right. Like you said, the homeschool, I wasn't understanding how but it's the reimbursement from the state not coming from the town side and doing that. And then
Yeah,
the
I
other one, like
apologize for conflating those two. Charter schools are different than homeschooling, although there is an impact on the state aid from the homeschooling, obviously a larger impact on like CTE and charters.
Greg.
Okay, I have a,
Greg, my main, one of my concerns is for unified sports. We've made great progress with disabled kids in unified sports, and they take great pride in that. And without these programs to help our disabled kids, it's going to be awful difficult for them. They're victims of this budget. They're the true victims of this budget. We have to, and I don't know how we can do it. I really don't know how we can do it. And their families deserve every opportunity for us to help their kids. I mean, and it's tough enough on an individual who's depending on sports for a scholarship. It's tough enough on a kid who is studying drama and wants to go to college on a dramatic scholarship. It's tough. It's tough on all our kids. It's these clubs and these sports programs and the CTE programs, career technical and educational programs. These cuts are devastating. Absolutely devastating. The families, it's affecting their scholarships to schools. But you know, we always talk about worst case scenarios. I've never seen it, and I know you haven't either. I've been around a long time. Since 1982, I've lived in town, and I've never seen it this bad. Never. I've never seen us in this type of situation. We need the rainy day fund, and we need the normal operating budget with maintenance of effort. Because if we don't do that, our kids are going to fall behind, or they're going to leave. And people come to this town because of our educational system. They buy houses here. They enjoy life here, and they have a great quality of life. You know, and I just see this. It makes it real tough it makes it especially tough on the town council and school committee. It's really hard on us, and nobody's supporting us. We're not getting help from the federal government yet. We're not getting Nick Mattiello, I saw it in the press. He doesn't want to talk about a budget for this year at all. He wants to wait until January. The Speaker of the House wants to wait until January to decide what our budget's going to be. We're lost without the town. We are truly lost without this town, and it's just not hurting. It's hurting the most needy of our population. It's hurting our future, and that's what I'm trying to impress with all of you. When you see a kid who plays basketball, and he has other sports figures in town that are helping him learn how to play basketball, and how to run, and how to salute and do ROTC. I mean, it tugs at your heartstrings, and we need this money. We really do. And I'll keep doing my job as school committee person, and I'll keep working with Gary, and I'll keep working with all of you. But for me to come out and say, we need this money, I think a lot of you have known me for a long time. And we really do. We really do. I want to see our kids go to college. I want to see them get their scholarships. They don't want to leave town. Football players don't want to leave town. They want to play. They want to play in Coventry. Field hockey players, they want to play in Coventry. It all ties together. The clubs, the sports, the honors program. Oh my God, we had two kids go to Cornell University. Scott Hammer's kids. They both went to Cornell University when they graduated. We had another kid go to Juilliard. we've had some marvelous kids go through our school system, and this is really tough, really hard. And you know, I'm just saying, I understand. I understand what we're all going through. It's not easy. It's not easy for me. It's not easy for the school committee. It's not easy on the council. And it's particularly not easy on the parents, because they want to keep their kids in school. They want to see them graduate. They want to see them, they want to see them in school. They want to experience what we did with our kids. And Donna Cooley, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, and so do you, Mrs. Bacon. You know, it's important. This is truly important. And whatever you can do, I would hope we could do 1.6 million out of the rainy day fund, and almost 1.8 million out of the normal operating budget, so we can bring back sports and all programs, all clubs. So I've said enough.
Dave, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Let me just a minute, Debbie. I just want to say something real quick myself. I see your hand.
Thank
None
you.
of us want to see sports. And the reason why I started this meeting so upset, it's so unfair to this council to let the people know and have them email us and say that we cut out sports. That is totally not true. We don't want to see this happen. We want our kids to play sports, but it was just not fair to the council to even do that when you know that's not a fact. And we're going to do our best. We need to work on this problem together. There's no doubt. I mean, we can't tax our way out of it. None of us want to be in this situation. We're going to do our best, but we're trying to do what's best for taxpayers in general, not just the people in school. We understand your guys' job is a school and ours is a town in general. I think that Mrs. Dixon had a great idea. I think we've spoken a lot. I think I've asked the town manager to give us a breakdown of what the percentage increases will be to the average household, to the price of their home. So after we finish with our questions and comments, I'm going to ask the town manager to put that up on the screen, so we'll have an idea of what kind of financial impact it'll have per household. So with that being said, I'm going to let Councilwoman Dixon have the table. Go ahead and let's let Ann speak first. Deb, and then you. Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Booth.
Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Mr. Florio, for your passionate plea for the students. We all share your concerns for them. So, and just to recap, and then I want to address something Mr. Cody said. Just to recap, it seems like there's enough support from the council to authorize funds from the fund balance in order to go toward COVID-related expenses on an as-needed basis. And as I said before, I'm happy to work with you, Mr. McGee, and the legal counsel to try to frame a motion that protects the town and also helps provide safety for our students and our community. So thank you, people who spoke up for that. I appreciate that. The next issue I want to talk about is a proposal by Mr. Cody. Mr. Cody, I heard you say that there should be, whatever we give the school, we should give the municipal government. And that might be a little bit of a problem because the school wants 1.8. Now 1.8 is going to increase the tax levy by 2.612%. This is provided by Mr. Arnett to me. If we also gave the town 1.8 million, then we would be over the 4%, which we are allowed. So that means that if we did a split half and half, we probably would go over 4%. So I think an approach might be that as a council, we need to decide what percent increase for the tax levy do we believe the voters will support. Now we know they don't want 0, but we don't know what they want. And I've received many emails from people, and I say in my response, what will you support? Were you okay with increased taxes? And some of them don't even answer that question. Some say no, and some say yes, but they don't want to see it over the long term. So I think one approach for our council is to determine just what percent increase, and it's a guess, do we believe that the voters would support? And then once we do that, I really would be in favor of a 2/3, 1/3 share. So in other words, once we come up with a percentage, then 2/3 would go to the school because they have the much bigger budget, and at least 1/3 would go to the town. And I would expect that, my fellow councilmen could make a suggestion otherwise, but that would be a starting point for us. What percent are we aiming for that we think will be tolerated, that will be passed at a referendum, and what the split will be? But I don't think it necessarily should be half for the school and half for the town, even though the town has desperate needs as well as the school committee. So I put that on the table. Where do we start from there?
Okay, Anna, thank you. I also believe that our job tonight is to come up with the correct percentage that the taxpayers will vote on, and we want the budget to pass. But I do got to say that I kind of side with Mr. Cody. I think we've devastated the municipal side, and so we have to come up with something that's fair to both the municipal side and the school side. With that being said, I think Deb Bacon had her hand up. You still have a question, Deb?
Yes, I actually have, a comment and then a question. I do agree with you with the school sports, the clubs, the honors program. I'm disappointed that the school committee did not have a meeting this week to reinstate the sports that were approved by the governor and Rhode Island Interscholastic League. I was really hoping that you all would have had a meeting to find a way to be able to have the girls and boys cross country, tennis, be able to participate, because that due date is this Friday to make a decision with Rhode Island Interscholastic League. So I'm very sad that that is not happening. With that being said, I am going to ask that if there is money given to the schools, I am going to ask that, I know once the money is given, we cannot say where the money is allocated. So I'm thinking out of the box. I would like to propose that if there is any type of an increase, that the school committee meet and vote to any of the money given, that they will reinstate sports, clubs, and the honors program. Would you commit to something like that?
Is anybody from the school committee or the
Luke
school?
Murray has his hand up. Luke has his hand up.
I see that. Okay, Luke, you have
If
your
I
hand?
may, so I will speak to that. So I understand, we all understand the need to try to bring back sports and clubs. To your point about voting on it, we couldn't have a special meeting this week. We just voted to cut 1.8 million. We do not have the revenue. It would be irresponsible for us to do that because it has to be balanced against the cut. We've just explained that we're requesting $1.6 million of COVID-related funding. So it would be irresponsible for us to reinstate sports when we have so many parents that need to go back to work and get their kids in schools. So the responsible, very difficult thing to do, as I sat at that rally last night and watched many of those kids speak, was to hold the line and see what the council would come forward with. With regard to making commitments, as you know, we spend the budget. And I think we've shown we've done plenty of due diligence to try to figure out how to spend the money that's allocated. I don't believe, and I won't be speaking out of turn with my members, but I think we're in unison on this, is that we can't be directed on how to spend that money and make commitments right now. We have to shore up the budget. We don't even know what the emergency funding looks like. There's no commitment tonight. So even a package that moves forward and says, all right, you get your 1.8 million, we have to accept that we want to reinstate sports. We want to reinstate clubs. But if we find ourselves in a negative hole where we're not able to balance the budget because COVID eats up more than we thought, our first priority has to be keeping the kids in school and protecting our families. So I think, what we can commit to is that we want to bring back sports. We want to bring back clubs. We see the importance. But to commit on it on paper and say, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we'll spend our money right now, I think, and my other members can chime in, I think right now that can't be on the table. I respect the proposal, though.
Can I just comment on that real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to just say that, you said you didn't have time to have a meeting this week, but you just met prior to this meeting at 6 o'clock to.
Not time. What I'm saying is we
hang on, let me speak. Can I just speak? So you did have time. You set the agenda on Monday. You could have done something with sports, but you're saying that you couldn't spend money you didn't have, but you just increased the substitute teachers up to $145 per day. That's a 53% increase. And with all due respect, you don't have that money for that. So I just don't understand. You could do that and then say you couldn't.
We do have the money for that because we've allocated 1.1 million to the
Madam
COVID
Chair.
relief.
I think Mr. Levis should answer this question. I think Craig has the correct knowledge that's needed to answer Mrs. Bacon's question.
Go ahead, Mr.
Levis.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling through this whole night. I have to be honest that, you know, we have been consistent with our budget, and to say that there's no responsibility on the side of the council when we're 2 months after that budget was voted down, and we put forward a budget that we were hoping that the taxpayers would have had an opportunity. If they turned it down, that's different. So to sit here and you know, Ms. Bacon, you know we don't have the money. In fact, you actually tried to pass or get the council to pass some type of resolution where they'd set a date so we could go back and you know, vote on the budget once it was voted down. You know, sports, I wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for athletics, but we're in a position where we don't have the funds. And again, I'm glad that you have this meeting tonight, but it would have been nice a month ago when we could have addressed this and done all this. So to say that you're disappointed that we haven't put forward another school committee meeting, I'm disappointed that the council didn't ask questions when we first put forward the budget. So tonight is, you know, I'm glad, I'm enjoying some of the conversation. I appreciate Dr. Dixon putting forward a resolution, but the fact is that we didn't need to be here, and we are here. So you know, there is no funds right now. We do not have the money, and our safety has to be priority. So the substitutes are around safety, having people in front of our students. So, you know, if we were able to have guarantees that we have money for safety, and then guarantees, we can't just put the sports back in the fall because we need to have guarantee that we can put back sports in the spring. So it's not that simple. And I know it sounds good, but you know, this should have been addressed before, and it isn't. So we're dealing with it now. And as Mr. Murray said, made really difficult decisions. So I think it's, you know, the community needs to understand that. So, and I believe they do. And I know Mr. Pearson had something to say, so I'm going to end my.
Okay, is there anybody else that has a comment? I'd like to say, I'm trying to go through the screen and I don't see anybody's hand up.
Mr. Pearson has a hand up.
Mr. Pearson, I don't see him on my screen, but go ahead. If Mr. Pearson has his hand up, go ahead and speak.
You're missing the view here, Kerry. Come on, this face.
No,
I mean, I'm just kidding. So my, no, the only comment was about the money. You know, we can't keep discussing the COVID budget like it's an approved budget. It is the requested budget, has not been voted on by the school committee. Just want to reinforce that point. Yeah, we probably need a lot of that money, but I still am ready for the debate on whether we need as many new hires, et cetera, as we do. We haven't had that real discussion and vote yet. So as far as bringing sports back, maybe. I will also remind the school committee that when we voted on these cuts, it was at 11 o'clock at night after about a 5.5-hour meeting, and I had no capacity to ask questions at that point, and I'm sure some of you may not have either. Maybe you did and didn't ask questions, but maybe we would have had a more robust conversation about the cuts if it had been continued to another meeting. But again, still, there is a financial hole here. You can't deny that. We will have significant COVID-related expenses. Cannot deny that. The nature of those expenses, I think, is still debatable.
Okay, thank you. I feel, just make a quick comment. Just a minute, Dono, I will get right to you. I still kind of feel like Ms. Bacon, out of the 70 million plus budget altogether, was it going to cost $25,000 to $35,000 to continue these sports? And you know, it's just out of that total budget, it was just hard to believe that, you know, we couldn't have sports, and then the way it went down, it just wasn't right. Donna, you have a question or comment? Go on mute, please. You're on mute.
I just
Thank-
wanted to make a comment. I wanted to thank Dr. Dixon for stepping up and coming up with a great idea. I also, Mr. Cody, I totally agree. I sat here during our budget meeting and I did not want to see the town get cut any more than I wanted to see the schools get cut. You know, as far as, you know, just everything. This is our town. This is what we moved into. And if I have to pay a few more dollars in taxes, then I have to do that. And, you know, I want to make sure that my property value stays where it is. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes for that. And as far as sports are concerned, I am all for bringing sports back. But if we can't afford to operate the schools with the COVID budget, I can't say that we can bring sports back. That's totally, I mean, that's Sarah's call. She's our financial director and she's a heck of a director. Well, I'll tell you, she's like top notch. She knows her stuff. So if she can go through and say, yes, you know, we can put money aside for this, or no, it doesn't look like we can, then I'd have to go with what she thinks. But anyway, I just wanted to thank everybody for at least, you know, working together. That's the main thing. We do have to work together for the town. We're elected by the people of this town, and we need to work to make sure that we've got a good budget. And that's just my comment.
Thank you very much for your comments, Donna. And I'm sure we all feel the same way. We don't want to be in this situation. I think the state is very neglect on their duties of giving us the money we need with all these mandates, and it's just a bad situation we're in. Like I spoke earlier, I did ask the town manager to make a list of what 0.5% increments, what kind of effect it would have on the taxpayers. Because I think it's time. We've had some discussions on this. I think it's time. And we've always talked about rainy day fund, we called it, about possibly getting COVID money. We realized that we weren't going to be able to tax our way out of this whole situation. We just never really realized how severe it was, and the state not stepping up. We were really hoping that by this time we would have some definite numbers from the state, and that hasn't happened. So I appreciate Ms. Dixon's comment too about possibly taking the COVID money out of our rainy day fund, and hopefully by then, with in a couple of months, maybe the state will step up and do their due diligence. But this is we all have it on our screen right now. This is what the effect would be. Mr. Manager, do you want to explain this? You probably will do it better than I will, seeing how you put it together.
It's very simple. A 0.5% levy increase is going to equate to about a 9 to 10 cent, because of the overlap, per thousand of value for every half point that we move up the levy. And on the last column on the right hand side would show that effect on a $300,000 average home in the town. A 2.61% levy increase is that 1.883 million that was originally requested by the school, and it's done up in half point increments, so you can see the full effect. The 4 points, if you went to the max cap, we're looking at an 87, give or take a penny or two, 87-cent increase per thousand on the tax rate, which will cause about a $261 increase in that $300,000 homeowner's taxes. Remember something, anything that we put out of here is going to come out as a separate bill. So this effect is going to be seen as a single number on what they're going to get. So they're going to see the cost of what this budget costs in that one bill, because it will be a separate bill that's issued for this.
And they'll actually get to see what the taxpayers voted on, actually. So they'll see the difference of voting.
If they vote to approve a 4% increase, if that's what that is ultimately put forward, then they will see what that effect is going to cost them on the ad, because it'll just be that increase, because we're based on the zero increase right now. I will say that I would feel very disappointed if the council wants to move forward and give money back onto the school side and not give it to the town on the town municipal side. We have got a bunch of very dedicated, loyal, hardworking individuals that I think would simply be demoralized if their budgets have been cut the way they have, and we fail to do anything to bring some funds back on their side. We've worked hard to keep as fiscally responsible as we can over the last 3 years. I've got every town department head, including the non-department heads, all administrative staff, and all of our non-union people have gone over 3 years without an increase in salary. 3 years. I have had people poached from the town and go to other communities because of the fact of what they're being paid. We're not getting it here. We are understaffed, and yet our people work diligently to get the job done with the staffing that they've got, putting in multiple hours beyond what they're paid for without putting in for additional overtime. Our tax assessor, for an example, works, there's 2 full-time, 2 FTEs, to use the school phrase, 2 FTEs in that department for this entire town with all of the properties that we have. That individual, Karen Martini, came from Charlestown. In Charlestown, with a property base of about half of what we have here, there was a staff of 3.5 FTEs in that one office. Over the last 8 to 10 years, there have been massive cuts in personnel on the town side. Our people continue to work, get the job done. Karen was here tonight till about 7 o'clock, 7:30. No, obviously no overtime, no additional fees, no stipends, no anything else going. This is what we get out of all of our people, especially the non-union that are pulling up this. To not give it back, give some back to the town so we can bring some equity back on that side is going to just decimate the morale on the municipal side. And I don't think that's an appropriate way to do this. Equal, I'd love to see equal, but if you go less than that, again, this is your decision. I'm looking to get input so we can put together a budget that the council wants to see. But I've done my spiel on how I feel about our employees here and how I think they need to have they need to get something back after, like I said, 3+ years of no increase. Our union, our Council 94 union, has received no increase in 2 years. Now, they are in negotiations, but that's been 2 years without a salary increase. That's why we've been able to do and maintain the budgets we've maintained over here, because we're not giving these people, and we're not bringing the bodies in that we really need. And we're at a breaking point right now. I think several council members have spoken to some of the department heads. I think you're well aware of the workload that we do, the things we've done in this town, and we need to be able to give them a little bit of a break and bring some people back to get the job done a little bit better. And
Well,
Mr.
Wazika,
Wait a minute, Dave, please. Let Mr. Wazika finish. I'm going to give everybody a chance to speak. Let him finish his spiel,
okay,
please.
no problem.
All right. Mr. Wazika, let me see if I get you on the screen. Are you done with your presentation?
I am done. I've said what I feel I need to say.
I thank you for putting that together. I think that all the council members had an opportunity to look at that, and that's how we're going to base, our decision on what we think the taxpayers can. And that is the reason what Mr. Wazika had said about his spiel on the dedicated employees we have on the municipal side. Why I was so angry, because these people have worked so hard, and we have not gotten the same reduction from the schools in my eyes, because these people deserve it. Mr. Florio, you have a comment?
Sure. We have a person right here this evening, Donna McDonald. Donna, how many hours did you put in today? What, 14, 16 hours?
Yes.
And you do it on a regular basis, correct?
Yes.
So, Mr. Wazika, we have a lot of employees that work just as hard as they do for the town. We have people who are on committees. We have people who are principals, who are teachers. They work on committees. They help open the schools. They develop the plans. Yes.
Florio, I am not denying that we all work hard. We all
do,
both
Mr.
sides.
Wazika.
Mrs. McDonald, have you received a raise in the last 3 years?
No.
No raise for you either?
No.
Okay.
And you deserve one. If you're working them hours, you deserve one. And
Thank you.
we have a we have a lot of people on the municipal sides of the same boat. We're not saying that, you know, the municipal side, we know for a fact has not received raises, and they deserve it. You know, nobody should go 3 years without getting a raise. So we're not trying to say that the school side doesn't work hard. We're just saying the municipal side deserves the same as what we feel the school gets. That's all we're saying. I mean, I don't want to argue about, you know, we all
I know,
deserve.
Mr. McGee.
But
I know, Mr. McGee. It just annoys me because people always think people on the school side are making all kinds of money, and they're really not. I mean, they're working some serious hours, and nobody ever says good luck to them. Nobody ever says you're doing a great job. They don't get that. Just like the people in town hall, they don't get the same thing. Although sometimes when I go there, I always make a point of saying they're all doing good jobs, Mr. McGee, because they're all, you know, we have a wonderful town with great employees, you know, and they're all good. I mean, all good, Mr. McGee, and they all deserve a raise and they all deserve credit for what they do. It's just, these times are so difficult for so many people. And thank you, Mr. McGee.
I appreciate. Yeah, thank you. I think the council members have had an opportunity to look at that list. I guess the next thing we really need to do is to figure out what the council members feel is, as though what kind of increase to present the budget to the taxpayer that'll pass. I mean, we all have to have some kind of input, some kind of idea. I mean, the people have spoken. They want us to raise taxes. We just got to figure out, you know, what is a good idea. I see. Does anybody want to start out from the council and give their opinion?
I do.
I see an Ann.
Yes. Okay, Mr. McGee, I want to back up 1 minute and say that the town council should not be telling the school committee how it should spend its money. And I believe we're all very passionate about seeing sports and honors clubs, et cetera, and curriculum completed, et cetera, but we're not in the position, nor should we ever be, in telling the school committee how it should spend its money. So that's my point of view.
I agree with you on that, Mr. Dixon. That is not our job. It is our job to appropriate the money, and their job is.
Now, I'm going to throw out a couple of numbers, and maybe Mr. Wazika, maybe you can tell us what this would mean on the tax levy. I'm going to suggest, I'm just throwing this out, that an allocation of 1.4 million for the school and 750,000 for the town. And so I would like to know what that does to the budget the tax levy, number one. And number two, I would like Mr. Wazika to chime in on whether $750,000 for the municipal increase is reasonable or not.
As far as the total amount, we're looking at about a 3% increase in the tax levy. And that'll be about a 67-cent increase. Overall, it'd be about a $200 tax bill increase for a person with a $300,000 house.
Okay.
So those are the numbers on there.
Okay, so there'd be a tax levy of 3% if the school received 1.4 million and we increased the town budget by $750,000. My second question to you is the $750,000, how reasonable does that sound for an increase for the town?
It's a difficult question to answer, Mrs.
I know, but we've got to ask those questions and we got to answer them.
Again, the things that need to be done versus the things that I can do. I mean, can I get some things done with 750? Yes, I can. Would $1 billion be more appropriate to give me some of the things? I'd like to put more money back into capital. Those are the things that we need to work on. I want to give a raise to the people that haven't received a raise. I want to bring some manpower back in that we need to bring in. And before we lose even more, our people are stressed. Can we get by on it? I can get by with, we're getting by with a zero increase. Anything we get is a help. If you're looking at that, I'd love to see $1 million back towards the town. I think John Arnett would agree that would be a reasonable number that we could work with to bring back some of the things, to bring back some of the cuts out of DPW, some of the cuts out of Parks and Rec. I mean, that kind of number would at least give us the ability to bring some of this back and give back to the town and give some more services to the town as well.
Thank you for your feedback. I do not believe that the taxpayers will tolerate more than 3%. I'm not even sure 3% will be tolerated, but I don't think they'll tolerate more than 3%. We know that the school committee is going to have to come back and ask for 4% again next year because of the contractual obligations that they have. And in the third year of the teacher's contract, I'm not even sure they'd be able to afford it at all. They go into deficit spending. So we know that there are going to be increases every single year. I think 4% is too much. Anything over 3 is too much. And I would like to have comments from the rest of our council members, what they consider to be a good, reasonable percentage. I'm throwing out, it's now 3%, 1.4 for the school, and 750,000 for the town.
Okay, does any council members have any comments on that? I'll give mine, but I'd like the other council members to speak. I see Deb Bacon's raising it. Go ahead.
Okay, just and just real quick, with the teacher contract, the teacher contract that was presented to school committee and to the town council that we voted on was a 2-year contract, not a 3. So you may want to go and check our documents that we had. It was a 2-year contract with a 2.5% raise this year. I had pointed that out. So if it's been changed, that's going to have to be another issue, another discussion.
Okay,
But
thank you for that. I thought it was 3, but I know that you had raised the question because of the typographical error in the numbers. Is that correct, the years?
If I
I don't
may
know if it was,
interject,
I don't know, but that's not, if it's
But
a
if I may
typographical,
clarify,
but it was a 2-year
Hold on a
contract.
minute.
But when, with this proposal of 1.4 million and either 750 or 1 million on the town side, when are we going to see that budget book? So we know exactly where all this money is going. What departments, both on the school and town side.
Well,
Well,
that's,
yeah,
can I
I would
just,
expect
that is why we need to get a consensus tonight, so the town manager can, he needs to get what kind of, so we can put that budget book together so we can get moving and have an all-day referendum in our financial town meeting. So that's why we need to have a discussion on what percentage or what, how much to schools and the municipal side tonight. So we will get our budget, he'll be right on it, get the budget books right away.
So I do have one more comment. It's been year after year. We're constantly going through this. It's been very frustrating. The fact that do we have redundancies? How is the town operating? I had brought this up before, and I believe all the school committee members and Craig Levis agreed with me. A performance audit of the town and the school needs to be done. I think the taxpayers have just had it. It's every single year. We need to have a performance audit done of the entire town and the school department. We cannot keep going to the taxpayers every year, 3 to 4% raises. There's a breaking point. I mean, there are several people that because of the distant learning, they have now had to quit their jobs. They have to go to work. They can't do distant learning. Work from home. They've actually had to quit their jobs to stay home with their children. So we have got some folks that have some real tough times right now. We have folks that still have not gone back to work. We have folks that have taken a cut in pay just so that they have a job. So these are the folks I am really concerned about. So I don't know, Ed, we had talked about it before about a performance audit. I don't know. Is there any way that could be put into something? Because if we keep doing this year after year, the taxpayers they're just going to keep rejecting it. So I think we need to show them how the town is, how the town's operating, where we're excelling, where we're failing, same on the school side, and be able to present something to the people. Thoughts on that?
I think that's something that could be taken up at a further date, but right now we're going to take care of the issue at hand, and that is to get this particular budget at hand. But certainly a performance audit in the future could be done. But tonight we really want to decide on how much we need to give the school. And I understand your point and point taken.
Yeah, because we're going to be in the same boat again. It's going to be the same thing, and I think we really need to have an independent audit done of both the town and the school, because it's the same thing over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day.
Okay.
I support Member Bacon's suggestion. She's mentioned this many, many times in the past. And I think that the voters want accountability. They want to know that we are using their money efficiently and effectively. And if there's some way that we can demonstrate this, it's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other council members that have any opinions, any comments concerning the suggestions or any suggestions on their own? Mr. Cody?
Yeah, I gotta back up for a minute. Only because I need to clarify. Did I hear correctly when I heard members of the school committee and the finance director for the school committee say that they couldn't guarantee that sports and extracurricular was going to be put back in? Because if the COVID expenses went higher, then things were going to have to be cut further on the regular budget to cover the COVID crisis. Because what I'm hearing when I say that is that even if this council was to approve the 1.8 million additionally that they're requesting and the 1.6 out of the fund balance, if COVID went above that and the town could not cover it out of fund balance, then the school committee would probably still have to cut sports and extracurricular activities to cover those expenses. So even if we give them the 1.8, there's no guarantee that anything that was cut from the budget is going to be put back in. It is all dependent on COVID expenses. Am I hearing that correctly?
What I think the concern was, we need to know what our revenue stream is in order to determine what we can afford. The idea of sports is not so simple. I understand Ms. Bacon and every single one of us hate the fact that we were even in this position to look at just fall sports. But I just want to remind everybody that we can't just look at fall sports, because what about winter sports? And then what about spring sports? What about the parents who are involved in band and the parents who are involved in National Honor Society? This is not just a fall sport issue. And that is what we have been trying to present. And while I understand that the school committee just voted on these cuts last week, they were presented at least 4 times over the summer of what we were looking at should a new budget not be brought forward by this council. Our goal is obviously our students and to make them well-rounded citizens, and sports and extracurricular activities are a core component of that. And I think, any school committee member, please jump in, but I think that would be a top priority to make sure that we can bring those back. But we have a responsibility to make sure that we make our buildings safe. So we will first need to even know what money we're looking at in order to make the determination of what we can and cannot afford.
Right, and when I made those comments, Mr. Cody, and you're right, this is not the place where we want to be. I don't want to have to say we can't bring back sports, but until we know what we have for COVID funding, which we haven't determined, you're asking us, or you're not, but we had an ask that we basically put on the table, we're going to guarantee sports come back. And that just financially, if you want to look at numbers, you want to manage things correctly, you don't make commitments that you can't actually back up. And right now, I can't make that commitment. What I can say is as Sarah said, we were extremely clear for months. And I said this, I went on the radio and railed on that we needed that 1.8, that there were implications, and we laid out a list, but we didn't want, I guess to our detriment, and I actually railed on last year's of putting stuff out there that we didn't back up, was saying, don't put sports on the table, don't threaten. We laid it out in a very clear fashion, I thought, why we needed that 1.8, not only for this year, but for the maintenance of effort next year because of our increasing costs. So for me to say responsibly this year, if you gave us that money without knowing if we're going to get COVID funding, that we're going to restore sports as a priority, that's irresponsible. But I can tell you that there was a very clear list that we had on the table, and it wasn't 25,000. To restore everything we kind of need to do in unison for equity, it's about 900,000. That's sports, that's clubs, that's all the things on the table. Now, they might get some reductions there because we obviously have some reductions in sports. Sarah could certainly speak to that. And I am more than willing as a member to restore that. But we also had an Ebates program, which was, I believe, Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, $250,000, which I was adamant I wanted back. because we have $250,000 from the federal government to match. And you know infrastructure, Mr. Cody. I know you do. 250, if someone gives you $250,000 and says, we'll match you 50%, you take that 50% if you can. Right now, that's a painful cut for me too, because I know the town in a few years is now going to pay not even $500,000, but because of the future value of money, it's going to be $600,000 and we'll bear the full weight. So I guess to sum up, these are not easy decisions. And I don't mean to be crass or dance around the issue. I'm trying to take it head on. And I've told parents this. I've responded to 20 different emails from parents, and I told them the same answer. I can't give you the answer you want. Right now, this is an anomaly year, and this is not a threat. Sarah, I've been talking to Sarah. We have cash flow issues. When the finance director says we're worried about paying payroll, that's a problem. So my priority for my own kids, one who was participating in yearbook club and drama, is to get her back in real school, because distance learning to me doesn't work. And if that means cutting her drama club, then I have to do that.
Okay. With that being said, is there anybody else that has, from the council, has any comments, any questions? If not, I'd like to make a suggestion.
Yeah, sir.
Okay, Mr. Labate,
I didn't know if Mr. Cody was finished or not, but I guess so. Yeah, my thoughts on the budget where it is, that in essence the council, and we can go around on all of this. The council felt that putting forward the zero budget was the way to bring it to the budget, to the people. Obviously, the people that came out and voted to reject the budget thought as though that the schools needed the money. My personal thoughts are that to bring it back, it was the school people who in essence came out, and they are determining that they need the full amount of the 1.8 or 1.9. That's what I support. I support going to the full amount that the school committee was asking for. I also will not try to guess what percentage the people are going to approve or disapprove of. And I believe the town needs the additional monies as well. And I will support nothing but the full request of the school and the request of about $1 million, which is going to bring it to that 4%. I'm not going to guess whether the people are going to try to approve of a 3%, 3.1, 2.9. I don't want to play that game. And I believe the schools do need the money. There's no doubt about it. But as far as, and again, I just want to mention something with, as far as performance audits or anything, again, and not to say that we're at the end of the cliff. We are there. We're past the tipping point. When you add up all of the personnel that this town has between the municipal side and the school side, multiply that by 2%, which is an average amount that seems to be that everybody is getting between the benefits and everything else. You've got multiple percent increases in the levy every year, and it's not going down. That's the plain and simple. It's a choice. You either pay the increase in taxes or you have reduced services. That's the choice. That's the reality. That's where we are. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Labate. My thoughts on it, there's no other council member that has a thought, is I feel as though that we need to give money back to the municipal side. We devastated the municipal side. I wanted to make a proposal that this would be a little bit over the 3. I don't personally think the answer is to go to the full 4%. I want to present a budget that's going to pass. I think after the people realize, that they didn't get out and vote, and they should have got out and vote, I'm suggesting that we give $1 million to the town side and give 1.2 million, which is pretty, so a little bit over the 3%, give 1.2 to the school side. I mean, I'm trying to be reasonable. The municipal side needs the money also. We're also going to talk about giving the COVID expenses out of our fund balance. I mean, I think that's more than fair. I think it's reasonable for the taxpayers. Like what Sebastian said, we're at the tipping point now where, I just don't think 4% with this time everybody's out of work. There's with all these issues going on. I don't want to present a budget that's not going to pass this time, because I think that people are realizing, what is ahead of them. So that's my suggestion. I'm open to, we have to give Mr. Wazika some guidance, somewhere to go, so he can prepare to get his budget books and the budget put together, him and Mr. Arnett. So we need to come up with a consensus, and we need some more opinions from the town council. So we've got like 3 different ideas, and that's not helping. Mr. Murray, you have a question or comment?
I actually have a question for our own finance director, Sarah. I know we've talked about this. So let's say we're at 1.2 mil this year. We obviously have, that's what's our maintenance of effort for next year. That allows us to bring back whatever, sports, debates, whatever we come up with, right? Prioritize. And we shave off the rest. Next year, what's our fiscal impact just on overhead expenses, raises, benefit load, etc.?
Okay, so I mean, we had presented a while back to the school committee, but ultimately
I believe it was 1.2 to 1.4. Does that sound about right? As a base load projected out next year.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you say exactly what you're looking for again? Because we had presented what it would look like. Actually, I think
I guess what I'm getting at is I hate throwing around numbers. What I'm getting is I'm cautious about throwing around numbers like 1.2 because of maintenance of effort. And what I'm getting at is, and this, I said this over and over, if we're already in a structural deficit, we're only going to make that structural deficit next year worse. Or basically, we won't have tax capacity to get where we need to be next year, or we're going to rail at the 4% against next year. So, we have to think about that moving forward. And I would urge, before we make a decision tonight, to allow our finance directors to run some of those numbers. That's all I'm asking, is to make the decision based on the math and what we think the projected for next year will be. And that way we can have an informed decision. That would be my, I know we don't make those decisions as school committee, but I also feel a responsibility, just like I do in our own budget, to look forward and look at the fiscal impact, because what I don't want to do is come back at 4% this year, then come back at 4% next year, knowing right now we're going to have to come, if we can mitigate it. And I don't know how long COVID will last. This year, at least, we had a $600 bump. We had some Fed support. We're hoping for Fed support, but if this continues, it may be worse next year, and that's the reality.
Mr. McGee?
Yeah, just hold on. Let me just make one quick comment. I understand where you're coming from, that we, more than likely will have to go to the full 4% next year. My thought process is that maybe more people will be to work. Hopefully COVID will be done. I don't know. I'll be guessing, but hopefully we'll have a grip on it. More people will be back to work, and it'll be more affordable for everybody. I understand it's probably going to be 4% next year, but I'm not opposed to having the finance directors run those numbers. But I mean, we basically have a general idea what the increase will be to the taxpayers, and that's what we're concerned with as far as Mr. Fleur. You have a comment?
I'd like to hear from Mr. Levis on this. I'd like to hear from the superintendent, not the acting town manager. Sorry. I really would like to hear from Mr. Levis on this particular motion.
Our chairwoman has her hand.
I have my hand up too. I would really like to speak.
Okay.
So I haven't said anything all night. And so I think I have to agree with Mr. Labassiniere. I believe that the school department has been saying the same thing the last few years, that we were on a cliff and we were falling off the cliff because the maintenance of effort that we've had over several years, a stretch of time, was not enough to cover our expenses. And in those days when the funding formula first came in and we received $700,000 more a year for several years in a row, the town side level funded us. And even though our taxes weren't level funded, the tax revenue that was brought into the town was spent on other things. And I'm not even going to say that it wasn't, good things. The municipal side needs to be funded as well. But the fact that we didn't get that maintenance of effort from tax dollars during those years that we were level funded was absolutely positively a critical error of vision in this town. And last year, when we laid off, I don't even know how many teachers,
487.
the year before, I think was even worse. I think we mentioned several times that the reason we were to that point was that the funding formula extra went away. And instead, we were getting cut on our state aid. And if our maintenance of effort number had kind of kept pace with that extra money that we got from the funding formula for those 7 years, if the town had also given us just a little bit more, the piece that really we needed, then we wouldn't have been in the situation where the state actually said, by the way, Coventry, you are doing fine. You need to tax your citizens more. And we're cutting your aid. And so we have been cut from the state on more than 1 year, several years in a row. We haven't gotten an increase. And so now we're trying to build, sort of dig out of this deficit, structural deficit that we have. And quite honestly, I think I've said this before, it's not honest to our taxpayers to say that this is a result of COVID. We need to tax our citizens to the highest amount for the next several years in order to dig ourselves out of this structural deficit. And Mr. Labasania made that point. He is correct. I really don't think we should be thinking, should we tax 3%? Should we go up 3.2% or 3.5%? I think we should tell and be honest with the citizens of this town that we need to go to the cap. The cap is there for a reason. And so my feeling on the matter is we need to go to 4%, and we may have to go to 4% next year as well. And who knows what COVID's going to bring. Those people in this town that are still working, the first argument that the town council made on our last budget that basically said people are going to be out of work, they're not going to be able to afford their taxes, we're going to level fund everything. Quite honestly, if a citizen in this town cannot afford to pay their taxes, it doesn't matter what the increase is. They are not going to pay them. We have also citizens in this town that are still working and will pay the increase, whether it's 4%, 3%, whatever the decision is. They'll either have the money to pay their taxes or they won't. So the first argument didn't make sense to me, because if you can't pay your taxes, you can't pay your taxes. So there are those people in this community that are willing to support schools and pay the full ride. I, for one, would say, raise my taxes 4%. And I think that's just the beginning of what's going to happen next year and the year after and the year after that, until we finally get out of the hole that we're in. That's all I have to say.
But what happens if we go with the 4% and we go to an all-day referendum and it fails? It costs us almost $25,000 every time we go to an all-day referendum, and we can't approve a budget that's not approved by the taxpayers. So we go back for a third bite of the apple, and then we start the guessing game. Will they go for a 1? Will they go for a 2? $25,000 is significant. I don't know. Where do you go with it?
Your mic is muted. Your mic is muted, Kerry.
Can I just say, Mr. Cody, I looked over the charter, and we don't have to keep going back over and over. It does state that we have to present a budget. If we do it this time, we need to word the resolution in such a way that if it does not pass, if we go to the full cap of 4%, giving the schools what they need and the municipal side, it does not pass, then we're level funded for the rest of the year. We did that several years back when Tom Hoover was the town manager. When we tried to pass the budget at that time, we cannot keep playing this game and try to pass this, you're right, 4 or 5 times until the taxpayers decide. If we go to the max now and they turn it down, then it's level funded for the rest of the year. And I could ask our solicitor if you would review the way it was written up several years back when Mr. Hoover wrote it, if that could be done, if that's possible. Are you on with us, Nick?
Muted, Nick. Muted.
Sorry.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. The charter says that the council shall present another budget if the first one is rejected. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what it says. It doesn't require the council to present any more than one, but likewise, it does not limit the number of times the council can present a new budget. You could present 3 or 4 if you wanted to keep trying to get something through other than being level funded, which is what would happen if you don't end up getting the voters to pass a budget. It is automatically level funded.
Mr. Wazika.
State law and by the charter.
Mr. Wazika, would you explain to Mr. Gorham how the resolution was written several years back when Mr. Hoover was, you're familiar with it, are you?
I am. It was written as such that when the vote was taken at the FTM, the resolution had in it at the very ending of the clause was that if this budget fails to pass, then it will revert back to the original proposed budget, which was because it was on a second or third vote, I believe, at that point, and it was set so it failed, and they ultimately went to what the original budget was. I can dig out the resolution as it was written and passed if you need it, Nick.
Well, I don't think the council can say if you don't adopt this budget, let's say that the budget that you ultimately agree on tonight and vote on to present to the voters is for, let's say, 2 million. You can't have it say on the referendum that if you don't approve this budget, then the increase is going to be 1 million or some other number. It's all or nothing.
Well, that's the way this was written. It was nothing. It was either passed or it would revert to it. I believe that was a 0 budget year.
All right, so that was okay. Well, you can emphasize what the result will be by law, which is it'll go to 0. But
Mr. Gorham, I would suggest, however, that I don't believe that an outgoing council has the ability to tie the hands of an incoming council. If it was done in the past, it may have been done with a council that was continuing to the next year. Here you have an election intervening, and I seriously doubt that one council has the ability to tie the hands of a future council.
right, I think what they're talking about though is what the question will be if the voters.
I understand what the question, but that they're discussing the question, but I want to make it clear they can't write a question that ties the hands of the next council.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I didn't understand that they were offering that, but I do agree with you.
All right. Well, any other council members have any thoughts? We really do have to lead to Wazika with an idea of what to go. I mean, do we want them to run some numbers of what a 1.2 and 1 million for a town? What's 1.4 is 7 million? Do we want to, we know the numbers, what it'll be to the full 4%. We do have to give him some kind of leadway so he can get working on the budget so we can get it presented. I'm looking for some input from the council members.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
I think it needs to go back to what the manager is going to present to, to the council for approval as in the normal budget process. I think he needs, Mr. Wazika needs to pick a number. I think he's heard enough over here. Let him, go where he thinks is the right one. And then at that point in time, on the night of that we adopt it to move forward, that's where we'll make a decision collectively and vote on what to present.
Okay, I agree with you. I just want to, I don't want to have to do this again. I want to present a budget that's going to pass for the people. I really do. Is there any other council members that have any concerns, any comments? Why don't we leave it at that then? We've all, I appreciate the discussion we've had. I know it's been difficult. It is difficult. It's going to continue, but I think we've accomplished some stuff tonight. I think that's a good idea is if any council members have any more discussions to want to email the town manager, but it would be him to after hearing our discussions and our concerns tonight, to present a budget to us for our approval. So,
Mr. President, what timetable are we looking to do?
Well,
to try to
I had a discussion. If we could get working on the budget, we could have something presented to us by our next council meeting, and that would enable us to have a FTM and all-day referendum by like the third week in October. So,
right.
Giving us 10 days, we have to advertise and so on and so forth. But if we can get this moving and have it presented at the next meeting, which I think is another week and a half, we could have it by October.
I have confidence in Mr. Wazika that he'll bring something forward at the next meeting.
Sarah, excuse me, Mrs. Mangiarelli.
Mrs. Mangiarelli?
Yes.
If I give you a number, how long will it take you to get a modified budget done? Would you be able to complete it as well in the week so we would have we can present this on the 28th?
So here's what I'm going to say, and I'm a little confused and a little concerned because we're talking arbitrarily about numbers that are going back and forth, throwing out numbers. The school department has been consistent with our need.
Okay.
If a lower number is brought forward, I will bring back a recommendation to the school committee for approval. But I'm just confused because the town all along said that they needed a 0% increase, and now we're arbitrarily coming up with a number to see if it passes the voters, instead of saying, this is the budget that we need to cover the expenses of the town and the school. If we don't get that number, this is what's on the chopping block. That's how we've gone consistently for this entire budget. So I will, whatever number you give me, I will come up with recommended cuts, and the school committee will have to make the decision if they agree or disagree with the cut presented. But we've been consistent with what we needed.
That works for me. Thank you.
Why would we need to cut anything else? We've already made our cuts. I don't understand.
Or I'm sorry, add back. I guess it would be what we would recommend to add back instead of to cut, because we already made the cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeez.
Okay, thank you. So with that being said, I'm going to have Mr. Wazika work. I see Mr. Cody, you're waving your hand. You have a comment? You're muted. You're on mute.
Okay, thank you. Is that better?
Yes.
I don't know. I've received a lot of emails and texts from parents in the town of Coventry since this has all been going on. And 99% of them have all been basically let them play. That's what they had I don't want to call it a demonstration. That's what they had the rally about last night. That's what the kids are interested in. I believe that the town of Coventry is under a time constraint as of this Friday, the 18th, to let the interscholastic organization know if Coventry schools are going to participate this year in those sports. We can't give the school department a number until the full council approves a budget presented to us. Therefore, Sarah can't do her budget with what can be added in with whatever that number is. So where does that leave the kids as far as the sports, the honor society, the things that seem to be important to the parents and the children that have been cut from their budget? Where does that leave them? What do we do to try to help them? What do we do to cover the kids? And I'll take a suggestion from anybody.
That's the school department. I still don't agree, but this has been going on for years and years, the threat of cutting out sports. Every time it's been going on since I was a kid in this town.
No, Kerry, it's not just sports though. No, it's honor society. It's the student council. It's the band. It's the choir.
I understand that, but the deadline for Friday is sports. The rest of the stuff is going to happen one way or the other, but the deadline for Friday is the sports. That is a small number versus the total budget.
Mr. McGee, I don't think you've listened to the entire conversation tonight.
The conversation. It is a small number of the several sports that are going to be allowed to be played this fall.
We should have had this meeting 2 months ago or a month ago, Mr. McGee. So you can pass it off all you want, but the bottom line is, you said you didn't even need to have this meeting tonight, correct?
No, we could have just passed the budget. I did this so we could try to have a constructive conversation. You're right.
Right, and there was no information even about what this conversation was going to be tonight. Mr. Pearson had asked me last school committee, do you know what the meeting's about? I honestly said I had no knowledge. So, I mean, we can point the finger all you want. The bottom line is that our hands are tied.
Okay. Right, so, Mr. Cody, I don't have anything for you. We're not gonna, our charter did not say that we had to jump in through hoops,
No. Mr. President, I'm not asking you to jump through hoops. I'm certainly not asking the council to jump through hoops.
I gave a time frame that we could have a budget presented to us by the next council meeting. It's the best we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Carrie?
Yes.
Hey, it's Deb. Can I speak?
Yes, absolutely.
Sarah, when your budget book is presented, would you be able to include that COVID cost list and anything else that you seem to be that may have to be added to that, so we can see all the COVID costs what you think right now? And would we also be able to see the savings list? I know we're not carrying that over, but could we please see what having the schools closed, having no spring sports, no middle school sports in the spring, and all that savings, could we have a list of all of that? Could you include that in the book, please?
Yes, so we had previously presented a list. We're still closing out the book, so I can update that. But I do want to be clear, we are carrying over the savings for next year. We're allocating those towards COVID costs. So we are carrying those over and planning to use them for next year. Also, just Mr. McGee, the sports is about $500,000. And while there's only a few sports that are slated to run come fall, the other fall sports are supposed to run in a fourth season, the athletic director shared with me this evening. So it's not just those handful of sports, and that was the point. We're looking at all sports, and it's not just a small number. The number for those sports that it would just run is about 42,000, but the other fall sports are supposed to run in a fourth season. So all sports is about $500,000. That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sarah, excuse me, you broke up. What did you say the cost was for just the cross country, the tennis? What was that
so just those are about
in the fall?
Just those are about $42,000. But again, the other fall sports are supposed to run in fourth season. So the question would be, you'd approve that 42,000. What about all the other sports? That cost is about $500,000.
Okay.
And I don't know if we want to get in the position of cherry picking what sports we're.
But I think I think the fall sports, there's just a very strict deadline for this Friday for just those couple of sports. That's it. So that's the whole thing. I think that's what, 42,000 for those sports. I just can't believe you can 42,000, but.
Okay, Greg, you have a question.
I do have a question that, again, at this point in time, there is, from what I'm hearing, obviously, without the dollars in there are no sports. It's done, or any of the extracurricular activities are done at this point in time. Now, one question comes to mind. We just heard it mentioned that there's an athletic director. If we got no sports, do we need an athletic director? Just a question. And then if we propose a budget which puts the money back in and finally gets approved, will sports be reinstated at that point in time for the remainder of the season, or the sports that are not that are not approved, or none of them approved at this point, but for at least the ones that are to come. Would that change happen?
So again, I think that the timing of this, we'd all wish that this discussion with the council had happened like a month ago so that we wouldn't be worrying about a deadline come Friday.
Not worried about the deadline.
I think that if this was reinstated come, the middle of the year, again, I would bring back the recommendation to bring back as much as we possibly can to make the best opportunity for our students.
And that's
So
what I'm
hopefully, maybe we
assuming.
could run fall, winter and spring.
That's what I'm asking, that if it's presented for the dollar amounts, that the school committee is asking for, and it gets approved at the all-day referendum going forward, will they be reinstated from that point forward? Because now the funding will be there.
Is there an answer to that from the school? Okay.
I'll chime in if no one else. I would think there's a high probability. Yes, I mean, we've cut that. We've been very honest on what the cuts were. We'll be honest what the cuts will restore. If we get 1.8 million, we'll restore everything. If we don't get that, we'll have to prioritize, obviously, with the amount of pushback. We hear the parents. We've told them. So,
Anything partial.
we're not trying to hold, believe me, we're not trying to hold this hostage. This kills me not to be able to say, yes, we can do 42,000, but I know the ripple that we'll have because we can't guarantee anything else at this point. So we're benefiting a very small population of our schools, a very vocal population, and I hear them. But then we now have, this whole other contingent that isn't getting taken care of. And they're going to ask, what about us? And we don't have an answer for them because we don't have answers on funding. So right now, the answer has to be no to everyone, which kills me. But that's the truth. That's responsible government.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank the school committee for attending this meeting. We are going to have a discussion with the town manager. He's going to present us a budget prior to the next council meeting. And hopefully we can present something that will be appeasing to the taxpayers and an all-day referendum to vote on. That being said, thank you very much for attending. Meeting is adjourned.
Carrie, don't we have to vote to adjourn?
Yeah.
Carrie, we have to vote to adjourn.
And I have to vote to adjourn as well.
This is a workshop. All right, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn our workshop.
I make a motion to adjourn the workshop.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, are you here? Could you take a roll
Yes.
call?
Terry McGee,
Yes.
Greg LaBoissonere,
Yes.
Gary Cody,
Yes.
Ian Dixon,
Yes.
Deborah Bacon.
Yes.
And I'd like to call for an adjournment as well. But before I do that, I would like to thank the council for inviting us to this meeting. And I do hope that some good will come out of this meeting. So again, thank you for your time and efforts on our behalf. That being said, is there a motion to adjourn? You're muted, Mr. Florio.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn at 9:26 p.m.
A second.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
I think he might have gotten kicked off.
okay. Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. Good night, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Good night, Kathy.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.